the February 4th, 2025 regular meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. May you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Santa Maria.
Here.
Councilmember Snedden.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
And Mayor Ross.
Here. And would you read the first item, please?
Item 1, Employee Recognition Service Award Pins.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is my privilege to announce our Service Award, Employee Service Award recipients for this month. I'll go through the 5, 10, and 20 years, and then I know we have our 25-year recipient here with us today to receive his recognition. So for 5 years of service, we'll start with Andrei Kuvshinov, who's a System Administrator in our Information Technology Department. Francisco Santana, who's a Parking Enforcement Officer with the Police Department. Antonio Quintera, who is a Streets Maintenance Worker 2 in our Public Works Department. Catherine Rosenberger, Administrative Analyst 1 in our Library Department. And Todd Falstrom, our Recreation Coordinator in Parks and Recreation. And then for 10 years, we have Franker Lomelli, Street Maintenance Worker 2 in Public Works, Maribel Barrios, Accounting Assistant in Public Works, Gerardo Soria, Wastewater Treatment Plant Chief Operator in Public Works, and then last but not least, before we go to 25, we have 20 years of service, Joe Gonzalez, our Facilities Maintenance Supervisor in Public Works. And then I'll have the mayor come down and we will recognize Adrian Gutierrez, Police Officer for 25 years of service.
I think this is going to be a rather popular recognition. Adrian Gutierrez, police officer with 25 years of service as of February 2025. Today, we proudly honor Adrian Gutierrez for his exceptional dedication and 25 years of service to the Santa Barbara Police Department and our community. Beginning his law enforcement career as a reserve officer with the Santa Barbara Police Department in 1995, Adrian transitioned to the Santa Barbara Airport Patrol in 1999. After graduating from the Ventura County Criminal Justice Training Center Academy in the February of 2000, Adrian began his career as a police officer in Santa Barbara. Over the years, Adrian has demonstrated unwavering commitment through diverse roles, including patrol officer, PAL officer, beat coordinator, academy instructor, and member of the Crisis Negotiation Response Team for an impressive 23 years. Adrian has strengthened the community through Spanish language outreach, neighborhood watch programs, school engagement initiatives, and the creation of Menudo Festival to support the Explorer program. His dedication extends beyond law enforcement, serving on the boards of STESA, SBPAL, and the California Police Activities League, and the National Police Activities League, while also volunteering with Immigrant Hope. With honors like California PAL Officer of the Year and multiple Gary Awards for valor and superior performance, Adrian embodies the excellence in public servants. His passion for building connections, empowering others, and enhancing community safety is truly inspiring. Thank you, Adrian, for your outstanding dedication and impact. Officer Gutierrez, on behalf of the City Council, the residents of Santa Barbara, and your fellow employees, it is my pleasure to recognize your many accomplishments and thank you for 25 years of dedicated service to the City of Santa Barbara and our local community. Adrian?
How many minutes do I have? I don't see numbers here.
You don't see numbers.
First of all, I want to thank you, Mayor and Council, for this award. The City of Santa Barbara, they've treated our family well. The community, thank you for the community. Also, all my partners, friends, family back here, I have an academy mate here with me, and I have my brother from another mother, Brian Kerr. So thank the department, thank you, Chief, for the support you're giving us, as well as council for the support you've given the police department. But mainly, I want to thank my family. I want to thank my wife, who's sitting here, Rhonda. My kids, I think they're watching online. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here. They've put up with a lot of overtime, right? But truly, police work, you know, it varies in hours. So I really want to thank them the most. So thank you. That's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Someone like Adrian doesn't get away with at least me saying a couple words. I promised I wouldn't embarrass him, but I don't know if I can actually keep that promise. But, you know, as a chief, I just have to say that Adrian really embodies everything that we're looking for. He lives in the community, he believes in the community, and he's here for the community at all times, and that's a really special thing. And for all the years of service and his family and everything that's been given to the department and that he still gives, and the first one still to volunteer to give his own time to PAL and the amount of hours, which, you know, you can't express that in words. It doesn't show up on a piece of paper about how much of the time he volunteers that is not being paid by the city because he truly cares and loves the community. So, you know, that's one of those moments where I don't always get to sing everyone's praises, but I want to take a moment to acknowledge that. So,
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
Not that I'm aware of, Mayor.
Well, if you're not aware of them, we'll go to the consent calendar then. You have some items to read, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 3, initiate local coastal program LCP amendment for creek buffer ordinance resolution. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara initiating a local coastal program amendment for development regulations along creeks. Item 4, approval of the fiscal year 2024-2025 agreement for operation of a county-wide library system and appropriation of county per capita funds resolution. Recommendation of the council be adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to increase revenue and expenditure appropriations by $26,798 in the fiscal year 2025 library general fund and increase revenue appropriations by $78,147 in the fiscal year 2025 library county fund budget for county per capita funds from the county of Santa Barbara for the operation of library services.
Okay,
That's
very
all.
good. Are there any items that need to be pulled by any member of council for discussion or separate votes? Madam Clerk, I don't have any speaker slips. Is there anyone online regarding the consent calendar?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by Jordan, second by Freeman. May we have the vote, please?
Yes, this is a motion for the entirety of the consent calendar. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Friedman. Please go ahead and vote.
Vote passed unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to general public comment. I have a few speaker slips here, and that is for items that are not on today's agenda, but still fall within the purview of this body. And you'll have 3 minutes at the dais, and we'll start out with Audrey Liggett. We'll give you 3 minutes this time. I think I cut you off last time.
Awesome,
so-
thank you, appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. Afternoon, Mayor and Council, City Attorney. Well, it has recently come to my attention that the city's attorney's office is looking into some aspects of the city's loan rehabilitation program. I am back today because I want to encourage council to fully grasp the severity of what is taking place in the city beyond the scope of what I had time to address last week. And to be clear, I am not here to address one specific case. There is a systemic problem that impacts nearly everyone associated with this program. At a time when council says we have an affordability and housing crisis, there are city employees that oversee this program who are putting a significant pressure on heirs of property to either assume what amounts to a ghost loan or to sell their family home, lest the city move to foreclose on the property. This is happening right now to people and families that are quite vulnerable. While for certain individuals, it appears that some deals can be worked out, there is no public information about the qualifications for deals, and verbal suggestions by city employees that oversee the program down on Garden Street imply that it is up to them. That is to say, it is completely arbitrary. They will decide your financial future, all while refusing to acknowledge some of the clear problems at stake. If you're unable to work anything out with these people on Garden, you are SOL. This doesn't seem quite okay. So I urge you in the strongest possible terms just to start asking some questions amongst yourselves that are rooted not just in public policy, but also the moral compass of the community. Such as, is it true that we, the city, don't have accurate accounting information on how much borrowers paid and what dates they paid it on? Despite this, the city of Santa Barbara is putting the burden of proof on heirs for loans not belonging to them, dating back 30, 40, 50 years or more, to show proof that a borrower might have paid something 50 years ago. The city has no proof of payments, and they're insisting that heirs show this. Is it also true that we, the city of Santa Barbara, are demanding assumption of these loans for heirs on property or immediate repayment? Otherwise, we, the city of Santa Barbara, plan to foreclose on these families? Is this all really true? And as you'll find, in many cases, the answer is yes. Which brings me to one final question I encourage you all to start asking yourselves amongst council, which simply is, could we as the city, as the creditor to these loans, come up with different solutions? And if so, what? Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Bayland, followed by Jacqueline Inda.
Hello all. My name is Brett Bolint. I'm a new citizen here in Santa Barbara. I was just speaking with the chief. I made an address here last week that the farmer market is an easy target. It still is. Nothing's changed. So I would advocate, please don't go to the farmer's market until it's practically protected, because it's a target. There's other intel coming in right now that Venezuelan gangs like Santa Barbara. It's an easy target. They already know, because I was publicly addressed. They see that. So I was taking pictures today. Those batteries that we have are not deployed on a Tuesday. Why not? Can you get some more? Can they be here next week? I'm sorry. You don't want another Isla Vista incident. You don't want another New Orleans incident. You don't want another Germany incident of someone coming down our streets and taking that out. So please, don't go to our farmer's market. It's not safe. I'm done.
Thank you. Jacqueline Inda?
Mayor, Council, my name is Jackie. I'm here on behalf of Casa de la Raza to let you guys know that we have been creating a response in our community with the fear that has been broadcasted throughout our region in regards to immigration customs enforcement. We've created a project, and our project is called the New Age UR Force, which has 4 tiers to its service, or 4 pipelines. We are now working really closely with our partner allies to not only create a basic needs pipeline, but a safe haven pipeline, as well as our community resource and linkage pipeline, and combining all of our media sources to be able to provide proper information to the community. CASA does need your help, because this is going to take a huge undertaking to be able to properly inform our community of all of the changes that are going to impact our migrant community for the next 4 years. So one of the things that we are doing is we're creating these family preparedness packs. These family preparedness kits have all of your emergency preparedness, and this is actually something that was taken out of 9/11 with Response There, so that people could get prepared and get all of their emergency information, their affidavits, their family separation information, and put it in a place where they would keep all of their emergency belongings to be able to pick up and go in case of an emergency. Those are the things that help our population feel more calm when they're better prepared. We know that in disasters, that makes a key difference. When you know how to respond and you know how to prepare your family, you can feel that ease of being able to walk down the street again. So those are the things that we're facing right now. CASA has served over 200 families in the last week with basic needs supplies because they've been dislocated because of fear of not needing or not wanting to be able to come back home. So we urge council to continue to work with CASA to continue to crank out information and really be that voice of advocacy for our community. One last thing, we are creating these wonderful signs over here that you see, which educate things like churches and other spaces of their rights of not only getting warrants and looking at what kind of warrants are ICE enforcement warrants, but also the fact that you might need a search and seizure warrant to be able to come into a facility like a church without permission. So we're going to encourage our community to get those signs out, to put them everywhere in the community and see what the guidelines are with regard to libraries and community centers for our region so that folks also feel like they can continue to access those places. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, very good. And with, Madam Clerk, are there any speakers online for general public comment?
We have no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll close general public comment and move to council member committee assignment reports. Anybody got one? All right, with that, we'll move on to our next item. If you would go ahead and read that item, please, Madam Clerk.
Certainly. Item 9, the annual presentation from Visit Santa Barbara.
Very good. With that, Ms. Janega Dykes.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and community partners, thank you for this opportunity to share this annual report on the achievements and the outlook on Santa Barbara's hospitality industry. My name is Kathy Janega Dykes. I'm president and CEO of Visit Santa Barbara. I'm joined by my very talented staff member, Carly Hopkins, who's going to be advancing the slides so that we're not here forever if I'm trying to do it myself. But we're both here very proud to represent Visit Santa Barbara and certainly the region's Tourism Business Improvement District. And we will be talking a little bit about the TBID and then also highlighting our record-setting success in 2024 and certainly our strategic vision for the year ahead. And I want to begin by celebrating the big picture mission of Visit Santa Barbara. We inspire travel to the region to enhance the economy and overall quality of life. It really is about the local community. When we succeed in this mission, a strong visitor economy sustains local jobs, tax revenues fund vital services, and the culture of this beautiful community is supported. So I want to begin by providing an overview of the Tourism Business Improvement District, or TBID. We've provided you with a very lengthy annual report in your packet, and combined with this presentation, we are then, this is what is called for the government code. So what is a TBID? And most of you were here when we renewed a few years ago, but I thought for the sake of our new council member and certainly for community members, I'd talk a little bit about the purpose, and you'll hear more about another bid that will be presented later on in the agenda. But they're created and they're governed by those in the hospitality industry who pay an assessment. In our case, that's our hotels, and our legal short-term rental businesses. And you may recall that South Coast Lodging owners organized with a goal to increase overall room sales. All of the properties in this district pay a 2% assessment for promotional services that increase room night sales. And key to this model, promotional investments are overseen by the payers, and all the monies must be spent on activities that really provide a direct benefit to those businesses that pay. So unlike taxes, these assessments cannot be used for general services by the government or by Visit Santa Barbara for that specific purpose. Among the three jurisdictions where lodging businesses are assessed, the City of Santa Barbara serves as the lead agency on behalf of the City of Goleta and the county. And therefore, you can look forward to another annual report such as this in another year. The district continues to play a crucial role in supporting our lodging-related businesses, really providing them with all of the valuable promotional opportunities and increased revenue from overnight travel. And through investments in advertising, public relations, and sales relationship, the district ensures that Santa Barbara remains competitive in what is an increasingly crowded tourism landscape, and it gets even more crowded every year. So beyond the TBID, I also want to spend the rest of today's discussion really sharing the state of the leisure and hospitality industry at large. And I think we're going to begin with some very big news that I know you're going to be pleased with. During calendar year 2024, City of Santa Barbara reached an all-time high in transient occupancy tax collections, or TOT, really establishing a new benchmark for contributions from our visitor economy. TOT was over $3 million higher, higher than in 2023, reflecting an 11% year-over-year increase. So this success really underscores the strength of Visit Santa Barbara's public-private partnership, really positioning Santa Barbara as a leader among highly competitive destinations, and certainly a major contributor to public priorities. And these tax revenues, coupled with visitor contributions to sales tax receipts, provides funding for many essential community services through the general fund. And one contributing factor to the record TOT was that 2024 hotel occupancy rose by 3% compared to the previous year, and it's a growth rate surpassing every competing destination we monitor in California. And for context, occupancy nationwide was flat, and it actually decreased slightly statewide in 2024. So our growth certainly highlights Santa Barbara as a continued appealing travel destination. Moreover, the local luxury segment saw this notable uptick, with premium economies experiencing even higher demand due to Santa Barbara's unique combination of natural beauty, certainly our cultural experiences, and our high-end hospitality. This region's boutique hotels and resorts continue to attract discerning travelers, really seeking that exclusivity and comfort and reinforcing our well-earned reputation as the American Riviera. An increased hotel and short-term rental guests translated to spending at our local restaurants, shops, certainly our entertainment venues, further amplifying the economic benefits across multiple sectors and really building on the region's sales tax receipts. I want to transition to talk a little bit about the success that Santa Barbara Airport has seen. They've also celebrated a milestone in 2024, welcoming 1.4 million passengers, which is 11% increase over year. And for context, nationwide domestic passenger volume only grew by 2%, really making our airport's utilization by our residents and certainly our visitors particularly remarkable. And this local increase in air service is not only a boon for the hospitality industry, but it's certainly a much appreciated benefit for our local residents. Every time I fly in and out of Santa Barbara Airport, I run into so many locals. And the expansion of flight options really provides the greater convenience and connectivity, really making our travel so much more accessible and affordable for Santa Barbara's community and businesses. Our airport's success, we welcomed Delta in June of 2024 with 2 nonstop service from Atlanta and Salt Lake City. And that truly has been a game changer, really offering the locals direct access to 2 year-round destinations and providing those important connections. And then with even more direct flights from key markets, Santa Barbara Airport and Visit Santa Barbara have really improved access for the visitors nationwide, further solidifying Santa Barbara's status as certainly this top-tier travel destination for business events and destination weddings. So as we look to ahead, while 2024 was a year of certainly lots of great achievements, remain focused in the year ahead. And industry data does indicate that global and domestic travel demand is going to continue to grow in 2025. So even starting on the year on the right foot, I was thrilled that TripAdvisor, and I'm sure most of you do know that important platform, they announced that Santa Barbara was #2 on their top 25 trending destinations in the U.S. That's quite an achievement, and certainly there's nothing like an early award to really add wind to our sails, and it's really nice to see that accomplishment. We are used to Santa Barbara's revenue per available hotel room outperforming competing destinations, and this momentum is really expected to continue long-term. With demand for luxury and upscale accommodations strong, Santa Barbara is really positioned to benefit from this increase in high-value visitors. The airline industry's continued investment in Santa Barbara Airport also looks very bright. In 2025, United Airlines has already committed to increasing its service from Denver and will fly up to 6 nonstop flights a day from San Francisco, and that'll begin later this spring. And we're going to continue expanding our marketing efforts. We're leveraging $7.9 million in promotional investments really to generate the overnight stays and increase economic impact to all of our stakeholders. Our marketing team places 500 million ads annually, that's shocking, while applying research to target only our most likely targets. And I'm not spending a lot of time talking about the amount of research that we purchase, but every decision that we make for marketing is really informed by the research that we purchase. I think most of you or all of you receive our weekly or biweekly reports. And as we expand our digital campaigns to maintain the engagement and drive visitation, I'd like to show you an example of our latest creative work. So this is a new video series, that we call, that's all right, that we call Celebrate the Unexpected. And each short ad, an unexpected duo is seen discovering new adventures throughout Santa Barbara. And the story really plays on the differences between the travelers as they embrace unique experiences aligned with their personalities, reinforcing that everyone finds joy in traveling to the American Riviera. So there's a couple of different parts to the series. I'm going to show you one more. Looks great on the big screen. I always see it on our social media platforms, and it's so different there. So beyond our fresh advertising, our proactive media relation efforts have really earned tremendous exposure for Santa Barbara. In 2024, our PR team secured 2,600 earned media placements, really ensuring that Santa Barbara remains this top travel destination in the minds of travelers without direct costs to us. For example, National Geographic featured our region as a must-see coastal getaway for nature lovers, while Travel and Leisure highlighted the best hotels in Santa Barbara in a major online review. And this organic media wins really stem from our extensive relationships with travel journalists. You'd be impressed with the care that we take to really craft that perfect pitch to land at that perfect time to earn ink we could never afford through paid advertising alone. So it's truly an amazing art. And in addition, our website facilitated a record 1.2 million customer referrals to local businesses, with 40% of those directed to lodging businesses, and they're the ones who contribute directly to the TOT and to the TBID. And these are so incredibly important, as those lodging businesses then have the opportunity to convert these referrals to booked room nights without actually paying commission to third parties. So as visitation grows, we're committed to ensuring that travel benefits really the broader community. We're enhancing workforce development programs to attract and retain local hospitality professionals. And we're also strengthening our visitor education efforts really to diversify the economic benefits beyond the central business districts alone. So I want to get to the ending with talking about the reason why tourism is so important to the community. The economic contributions from tourism certainly extend far beyond jobs in the hospitality sector. The elevated transient occupancy tax we discussed earlier certainly help pay for services that directly enhance the quality of life for our residents and brand appeal for our travelers alike. And these certainly fund fire and emergency services, ensuring public safety, the parks and recreation, maintaining our cherished outdoor spaces, community festivals and cultural events, really promoting our vibrant art scenes, and creek restoration, water quality program as well. The economic activity generated by travel translates into job creation, business growth, and really a stronger, more resilient local economy. And you may be surprised that visitors sometimes love Santa Barbara so much that just on one trip, they come back to get married here again and again. If you're at the courthouse lately, you'll see how many weddings are there every day, not just on weekends. Others are really inspired to bring their corporate teams here for meetings and conferences. And in other cases, travelers even choose to open a new business here in Santa Barbara because of the potential that they see in our community. As a respected colleague of mine once said, if you build a place people want to visit, you build a place where people want to live. If you build a place where people want to live, you'll build a place where people want to work. If you build a place where people want to work, you build a place where business needs to be. If you build a place where business has to be, you'll build a place where people have to visit. So it all really starts with that visit, and it doesn't happen with Visit Santa Barbara and all of us in this room. So Santa Barbara's tourism industry, it's not just about welcoming visitors, it's really about fostering that economically strong and culturally rich community. It's that deep sense of pride in Santa Barbara. When we host our own friends and family, they remind us of the treasures that we have right here at home. The growth in overnight travel Visit Santa Barbara has cultivated really reaffirms that our award-winning community remains highly desirable and well-positioned for future success. And with the city's strategic investments in tourism marketing, certainly our air service development and public services, we're confident that 2025 will be another strong year for the leisure and hospitality industry. So I want to finish and close by thanking all of our lodging businesses, our amazing local partners. We have a lot of different wineries in the audience today. Thank you to all of you. Certainly our dedicated city officials and community partners at all for making Santa Barbara a world-class destination. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as this is an informational item, I'm going to ask my colleagues that will do questions and comments at the end. I've got a few speakers first, so I'm going to go ahead and call on them. We'll begin with Chris Hastert.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. Chris Astor, your airport director. I'm just here to recognize our partnership that we have with Visit Santa Barbara and the work that they do with us. This partnership is key for promoting tourism and supporting local air service at SBA, which also translates to better destinations and competitive options for our local residents and businesses. Visit Santa Barbara plays a crucial role in the success of our airline partners through marketing efforts for the inbound passengers. We focus on our current residents and outbound passengers. Connecting the airport with hospitality industry to better understand their customers' needs and travel habits so that we're better educated as we meet with the airlines. But then also engaging directly with the airline decision makers, our airport staff, and our consultants to strengthen our existing routes and attract new service that supports our community and contributes to Santa Barbara's economic stability. Kathy and her team play a key role in adding Southwest Airlines, which was a couple of years before I started here, but more recently she mentioned Delta Airlines. But also it brings competition with all the existing airlines with United, Alaska, and American Airlines, leading to improved options for all of our local travelers. With tourism making up about half of our passenger traffic, this collaboration is essential to sustaining a vibrant travel economy and keeping Santa Barbara connected to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Warren Nalcon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Warren Nocon, General Manager for Hotel Californian. If you can believe it, it's been 7.5 years since we've opened. Taking you through those 7.5 years, it all started with a little thing called a microburst. Then our opening itself, the Thomas fires, then the debris flow, the subsequent market impacts, then a really great 2019, then COVID, and all of those intricacies and the countless evacuations and difficulties in operating our hotel and business. They told me it was God's country. They didn't tell me it was act of God's country. It's always been Visit Santa Barbara that led the hospitality industry and in keeping Santa Barbara the world-class destination that Kathy mentioned. After having worked in several markets, including New York City, Times Square, San Diego, Orange County, Palm Springs, Los Angeles, I can honestly tell you that it is Visit Santa Barbara under Kathy's leadership that has made this market as collaborative within the hotel industry and hospitality industry as it should be. This is the only market that I've ever wanted to work in after I got here. Everything else I wanted to leave. As an independent hotel, we are a brand of one. We do not have the resources that some of our competitors have. We don't have the billion-dollar marketing engines of a Hilton or a Ritz-Carlton or our other major brands. Our hotel, along with most of the boutique hotels in Santa Barbara, rely on Visit Santa Barbara to help us fill our hotels, our restaurants, our wine tasting rooms and spas, which is why we participate in pretty much everything they do, because we believe in what they are doing. We have limited funds, but we'll always consider anything that Kathy and her team propose. I'm honestly not sure how she makes it happen with the budget that she has at her disposal, but I implore and plead with you to continue to support VSB's efforts, not only this year, but in the coming years as well, as we see our really volatile industry continue to change. We will need to support the Visit Santa Barbara team to keep our market relevant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ann Pazer?
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, council members, and esteemed city staff. You guys get overlooked. My name is Ann Pazier, owner of Santa Barbara Gift Baskets and board chair of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to emphasize the invaluable contributions of Visit Santa Barbara to our local business community. Through their tireless efforts to attract visitors to our region and their ongoing partnership with the Chamber, VSB plays an essential role in ensuring our local economy thrives. The Chamber's mission is to support local businesses and promote a vibrant, sustainable economy. Much of this work is made possible by our important partnership with Visit Santa Barbara. Their support in promoting our hospitality career inspiration campaign, offering visitor services throughout the region, and enhancing visitor experiences at the local visitor centers is truly indispensable. Additionally, VSB's commitment to providing timely, accurate, and transparent data empowers the Chamber and local businesses to make informed decisions, resulting in more successful outcomes for the entire community. The economic impact of Visit Santa Barbara is undeniable. Even with the constant competition from other global destinations, our region continues to draw consistent visitors thanks to their efforts. Visitors are not only attracted during peak seasons, but also during slower periods when tourism generally slows down. This is a testament to the effectiveness of VSB's initiatives. Local businesses, particularly in the retail and dining sectors, experience increased customer traffic and spending when visitor numbers rise. As the owner of a retail business, I can personally speak to the role that Visit Santa Barbara plays in sustaining success, especially during those off-season times. Santa Barbara Gift Baskets has been a proud member of Visit Santa Barbara for over a decade. The team at Visit Santa Barbara goes above and beyond connecting businesses like mine with hotels, event planners, and destination marketing companies. They work to provide locally sourced room amenities, entertainment, dining, and other services for the groups they bring to our community. Visit Santa Barbara consistently highlights not only larger businesses, but also the small locally owned shops like mine that form the heart and soul of Santa Barbara. These businesses are the backbone of our city, and many of them, including mine, would struggle to survive without the influx of revenue from visitors. In conclusion, the support Visit Santa Barbara provides is far more than just a marketing initiative. It's a lifeline for local businesses and a key driver of our region's prosperity. I am proud to stand here today to advocate for the continued support of this vital partnership. Together with Visit Santa Barbara, we can ensure that our community remains a vibrant, thriving destination for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruari Bedison? If I got that right or not.
Mayor and council members, my name is Rory Bateson, and I run the visitor centres on behalf of the South Coast Chamber of Commerce. We have 2 visitor centres. We also do pop-ups at the cruise ships, the airport, UCSB Parents Weekend, and basically anywhere there's a social gathering where it needs a special focus, we end up. Last year at State Street Visitor Centre alone, I served 91,000 people. I'm here to advocate for Visit Santa Barbara because I can't tell you how many times someone's come in and said, like, hey, we're deciding between Florida and Santa Barbara. I was deciding between Napa or Santa Barbara, and an ad came through, and it just was their difference, their professionalism, their quality of service, of generally bringing in, because there's so many options here today that we could pick, but it's little differences too. The hard part then is on to me when I walk into a visitor centre is to deliver on those promises that were not just a faceless kind of like, oh, it's a beautiful ad and you'll never get any more respect after that and thank you for your money and good luck. We try to put the human face onto it, and if you ever read our Yelp reviews, Google reviews, you'll see that we're a little bit successful in that. I really want to strongly advocate as well for the visitor services that ye as people continue to choose the hard job of like, do I give money to here or there? Especially like the shuttle services. The probably the number one thing that I'm going to push for as well, to give the visitor and local experiences better experience when they come here. Again, we employ 10 staff, 30 volunteers at the different visitor centers, and we can only do this from the continued support from Visit Santa Barbara and from the city. And I please encourage you, as always, to come down and visit someday at the visitor center, and I can tell you what to do in your own town, okay? And 21 years ago, I visited here as a tourist. And then I've been living in this county for 19 years, so like you do not know who the next immigrant is going to come in and take it for. So thank you all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any hands online for this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from council regarding this? Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Vanega Dykes, if you don't mind, how do you perceive the current climate in our country affecting the tourism industry here?
So right now, when we're looking at 2025, and we're looking ahead, we're looking, we purchase research that does provide information on advanced bookings, and we are looking at a healthy tourism industry as of right now. I can tell you, Councilmember Gutierrez, we've had already some disruptions, of course, beginning in January with the horrific fires down in Los Angeles. While we saw a spike in transient occupancy tax collections for the month of January, that overall sentiment is affecting bookings for the month of February. And we're spending as much money as we can right now, really trying to promote the upcoming 3-day holiday and then also a spring break right after that. So right now, certainly the forecast looks positive.
Is the issue with the immigration affecting the tourism business?
Certainly, there are, Councilmember Gutierrez, there is certainly a number of conversations that are being had. Right now, our job for Visit Santa Barbara is really specifically focused on trying to drive visitation to the area.
Thank you.
Ms. Snedden?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, and thank you for hosting the annual Visit Santa Barbara, the Tourism Summit. That was really informative, and a lot of the same information, and the speakers were great. I had some questions. Do you know sort of where people are visiting? So you have like this all-time TOT high. Is it because across the board all rooms are booked, or is it just high-end, but there are vacancies in other types, or where? Or maybe if you know or not, but where are people going?
Yeah, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sen, there are kind of two parts, two responses to that question. The first is kind of geographic. Where are our visitors coming from? About a quarter come from Los Angeles area, and then more than half actually from the Southern California region contribute to our travel economy. So a significant number come from travel here from the Southern California area. And it's not to say that we don't focus on areas outside Southern California. It's so important for us, for example, to focus on our direct fly markets or East Coast visitors, because we know that those visitors will travel here regardless of the weather or anything else, and they tend to obviously stay longer as well. So our focus is really kind of for that, for the Southern California resident who tends to stay a little bit shorter, and then certainly more further afield that those visitors will stay a little bit longer and will travel here year-round as well, too. And then I think you were asking also about what sort of accommodations do better than others. And a lot of it is, the trends kind of change and fluctuate. Right now, we're seeing luxury do quite well. One of the challenges that we're seeing right now is certainly people are being more cautious with their spending. So while we did see an increase in occupancy last year in our lodging facilities, we heard from many of our members, restaurants or bars and lounges, et cetera, that they didn't quite see that influx of spending in their respective businesses. And that has to do with more people being a little bit more cautious with their spending. So important for all of us, not just our visitors, but all of us in this room, that we continue to support, especially these local businesses that rely on both residents and visitors to remain afloat.
Thank you. And then do we know where people go when they're in town? Are people going downtown? Are they going to the San Ynez Valley? Or when people do come, where are they spending their time?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sutton, I think it's really a combination of both areas. If they are here for wine tasting, they may be coming to Santa Barbara, tasting here, and then certainly heading up to the valley as well for more tasting at some of the wineries. But they're pretty much, I mean, going everywhere. We're pretty lucky here in Santa Barbara. We've seen an influx of new businesses that have opened lately. Certainly, new restaurants that have opened in the city of Santa Barbara. We have a new dining and retail development that's underway called The Post. And certainly, downtown area continues to attract more and more businesses in the area, too. We're lucky that tonight's the start of Santa Barbara International Film Festival, which will bring even more vitality into the downtown corridor.
That's great news that downtown is still a place that businesses want to come and that people want to visit. And then, a couple years ago, I think at the Tourism Summit, there was talk about ecotourism. Is that still something that's prevalent or being?
Yeah, I think Councilmember said, so I think ecotourism could be defined in a lot of different ways. Years and years ago, it used to be defined as a little bit more focus on sustainability. We focus on nature tourism. Sustainability is still very important for our visitors, and we're lucky the city of Santa Barbara has such a great sustainability department as well. But yes, people come here for nature. They come here for enjoying our parks and our recreation. They come here for obviously enjoying the beaches. They come here for whale watching year-round, or even heading out to the Channel Islands National Park.
Thank you. And then the blue economy, we've talked a lot about that, and like how effectively is that being sort of advertised, that we have locally, sustainably sourced seafood, or is that part of it?
Yes, Councilmember Serena, that is a very much part of it. I think that's one of the reasons why Santa Barbara is so appealing. People like to eat locally, whether it's from the ocean or it's from farms that are from our vineyards as well too. But it's so important to really talk about what is grown and what is available at our restaurants for our visitors to enjoy.
Thanks so much. And then you answered my question already about workforce development and those types of things. But sometimes you have like a job fair, and if any updates on that, how's that going?
Councilmember Sneddon, so I think Ann Pazer referenced the partnership that we have with the Chamber of Commerce, and that is, it's really kind of an employee recruitment program, and it's the objectives are really twofold. One is, I think following COVID, our industry lost a little bit of its cachet, and many employees left the industry as a whole. So part of that objective of that program is really to educate people about the various positions that are available. And I think back to when I started, gosh, many years ago, I'm not going to say how many, but I started off way at the bottom. I graduated from college. I was fortunate to be able to find a job as a special events coordinator at an independent hotel, and then gradually moved to Hyatt Hotels and was able to move up. It's not, it really is such an important industry for training, for learning, for career development too. So the second objective of this employee recruitment program, or hospitality inspiration program, is really trying to find employees right away. We saw a little bit of decline in the number of hospitality industry employees in Santa Barbara County as a whole last year, reversing a 3-year trend. So the idea is just to make sure that we do have, those jobs available. And anyone probably in this room, whether it's a hotelier or a winery, will say that they're definitely looking for employees. So that hospitality inspiration program is really key to that. And we have been running that campaign now, I think it's going on 3 years right now, too.
Thank you so much,
You're
and
welcome.
thank you for
and
all
we
you
do participate also in the job fairs as well, too.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Dingadix. Just one question, then I'll do a couple quick comments.
Okay.
But at the tourism summit, you referenced how 2019 is the benchmark year, and in your presentation, it seemed like, hey, these are the best years we've ever had by far. If you could just put a little nuance on that, why, even though these numbers are great and we're ahead of the game in front of most, why was 2019 so great, and why are we still, or how are we still playing catch up with it?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman. Yes, we do reference that. 2019 is the benchmark. And we had a keynote speaker, somebody who represents Smith Travel Research, which is a lodging industry performance data program. It's the reports that we receive on a weekly basis to identify how hotel performance is. And I think he referenced the fact that 2019 is really the benchmark for many communities throughout the U.S. It was one of those years, it's hard to think back that long, obviously right before COVID started, but where everything just came together. There was very strong meetings and conference business at that particular time. Leisure business was at its all-time high. Immediately after COVID, of course, we saw some spikes, and then 2 years after that, we're starting to see business stabilize. We have not yet seen the return of international visitation in large numbers. Prior to 2019, that market was stronger than what we're seeing right now. So it really is a combination of those markets, but we're really lucky that we're starting to see that upward trajectory as well right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that because at that time there was a lot going on and we still haven't caught up to where we were in some aspects.
Yeah.
But we are, like you mentioned, ahead of the game. We were one of the, you mentioned the top in our markets for expansion when a lot aren't growing or even in decline on the one chart you showed. And the TripAdvisor, that was great news. But I wanted to thank you and your team and all those in the industry, all the workers in the industry who make that experience so personal when anybody comes here, and that's what they go home and tell stories about. It doesn't happen by accident. It's it's hard work, it's thoughtfulness, it's deliberative. And I'd just like to share a story with Ms. Nocom and yourself about why your advocacy is so important. And a couple of years back, Ms. Nocom spoke earlier, came to me and Councilmember Jordan, and he said, Santa Barbara is a destination. Everybody loves to come here, but nobody comes here on New Year's Eve. And so why aren't people coming here on New Year's Eve? He said, because nobody wants to go to a New Year's Eve party that ends at 10 p.m. And we had an ordinances on the books that didn't allow us to have a New Year's Eve party with the music to go till midnight. And it was affecting our entire industry. And so it took a little bit longer than myself and Councilmember Jordan here had hoped, but we were able to go, and the council unanimously supported making a one-night exception change for New Year's Eve. And this was the second year, and I talked to Mr. Nocom, and I said, well, how is it going now that you've had a full year, actually and it's already exceeded expectations of where it should be. The events are selling out, and it's bringing people in here at a time, the off-season ones there, just by making that little 2-hour change. And your organization and advocates like Ms. Nocom are instrumental in that, and it makes a big difference. So I just wanted to share that story of how that works. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dana's going to hear that and go, what the heck? You always tell me there's nothing to do. You can watch the ball drop at 9 o'clock and go to bed. And so now I'm in trouble. I just have a couple of good things to say. I've been very fortunate to be your liaison for, 5+ years now, sitting here on council. And I know you've often heard me say this, that this is my favorite group to work with. And that's because generally they are people that welcome people all day and every day to their establishments. They have to be nice. They're nice for a living. They don't have to be nice. They're nice for a living. And there's not many old enough people in the room, I think, that date back to, if you can imagine, people like Tony Romasanta sitting at a table with you, or even the Weber family, who at one time owned 5 properties in town. And all of them coming to a realization that even though something might not have been targeting something specifically that benefited their property, that all their properties were going to rise on the tide of what was being done. And that has quietly, mostly, been done in the background by Visit Santa Barbara and the leadership and your entire team, not just you, but you and your entire team in the background. And I'm especially proud of the I guess, the evolution over the past, I'm not going to say how many years we've worked together, but over the past few years, and one of those was several years ago when we played with, I think I helped a little bit, played with your bullets on your mission statements to make sure that we were getting across the connection of what you do to what benefit the community gets.
Yeah.
And in many times that benefit that goes to the city and then the city is able to use it is actually benefiting the people who need the help the most in our city. Not guests, not hotel owners, but people that actually need the help in our city. I think your placemaking slide that you snuck in today is a great another step in that. I'm sad I didn't have a place in that and you snuck that in. But I really see you as an organization that walks the talk in the way you connect with the community. A lot is made about the jobs and housing imbalance, and many times is focused on the hospitality or particularly hotel industry. Unfortunately, that's not unique to just them. It's also present in the industries like food and beverage, retail, agriculture, contractors, landscaping. But for some reason, we look at hotels that way. And I just also want to acknowledge that I know you're working in the background right now on ways that you can participate in improving that jobs housing imbalance in a way not only that helps your particular industry, but helps the community as a whole. So just want to say thank you. I'm sorry it's just a once-a-year appearance like this, but happy to take the opportunity to say thank you.
Yeah. Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, thank you very much for those comments, and thank you for recognizing the importance of tourism to our community as a whole. We're very lucky to be able to represent this community. We have so many passionate residents that live here, people who work here, who really want to provide that experience that our guests have really gotten used to receiving, and they do here in Santa Barbara. I think people forget that tourism actually began here in the late 1800s. We were welcoming visitors way back when prominent East Coast families were traveling here by railroad in the 1900s to seek wellness experiences, and so tourism's in our DNA, hospitality is in our DNA.
All right, thank you very much. Good presentation. Appreciate that. With that, we'll close that item and go on to item 10. Would you like to read the item into the record, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is item 10, appointment to Fire and Police Commission.
Okay. And who's going to run this little shindig? That'd be you?
That'd be me, Mr. Mayor. We have 2 applicants for the Fire and Police Commission. We can receive nominations for them and then vote.
All right, very good. We don't have the names in front of us, unfortunately, but...
Right. Mr. Mayor, I can give them to you. It is Andy Barad and Alberto Lapuz.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And with that, I will, the nominations do not need to be seconded. They can simply be put up as nominations by anybody on the council. So with that, we will accept nominations.
I'll nominate Lapuz, if that's the right way to say his name.
Very good. One for Lapuz. Anyone else for a nomination? Ms. Sneddon.
May I ask a question? And I
Please do.
apologize for this because I don't have those notes in front of me. Can you remind me who interviewed first and who interviewed second? I apologize. that
Yes,
I-
one moment, Councilmember Sutton.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
that's right.
That's right.
I would like to nominate the other name. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but I didn't want the moment to pass.
Barad? Okay, so nominate Barad. Okay, very good. So we have a nomination for each of them. All right, so we'll go ahead and do a roll call on the canvas on the nominees.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. I will read the name of each council member, and each council member, please say whether you're casting your vote for Lapuz or Barad. Councilmember Harmon.
LaFuz?
Councilmember Santa Maria.
Remind me how you say his last name again. I'm so sorry. The last name, can you repeat them just so I can pronounce it correctly?
Certainly, it is either LaPuz or Barad.
Oh, LaPuz.
Yeah. Councilmember Snedden.
Barad.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman.
Lapuz.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
LaPuz.
Councilmember Jordan.
Lapuz.
And Mayor Rouse.
Lapuz.
And Mr. Lapuz is appointed.
All right, thank you very
6 to 1.
much. And would you read the next item into the record, please?
Item 11, granting consent to the County of Santa Barbara to establish the Santa Barbara County Wine Business Improvement District, SBC wine bid, and include territory within the city of Santa Barbara in the established district resolution. And recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara granting consent to the County of Santa Barbara to establish the Santa Barbara County Wine Improvement District, SBC wine bid, and include territory within the city of Santa Barbara in the established district.
Thank you. So we've got a fair amount of speakers for this item, as well as a presentation. So I'm going to ask that anyone who wants to put in a speaker slip do so by a quarter after. And anybody that's online listening that wants to speak, please raise your hand online by a quarter after 3. And since there are a number of you who want to hear from everybody, I'd like to keep everybody to 2 minutes per. So hopefully you didn't write something out for 3 and got to talk real fast, but hopefully that'll work out for everyone. So do we give me 2, please, Madam Clerk? And we will begin with Ashley Parker Snyder. Oh, got it. Wait, forget that. Let's start with Brandon Bodette. You got me all excited there.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good afternoon. Brandon Bodette, Acting Library Director, but here in my city administrator role capacity. The item before you is the Santa Barbara County Wine Business Improvement District. The business improvement districts are not uncommon for the city of Santa Barbara. You might be familiar with our downtown, Old Town Business Improvement District, our property business improvement districts in Coast Village and downtown, the tourism business improvement district that Ms. Kathy Janaitis just gave you guys. But this one's a little bit different in that the item before you today is the county will actually be the governing board of this. So the Board of Supervisors will be the entity conducting the ballot process and things like that. So the recommendation before you today is actually to give consent to the County of Santa Barbara to establish the Santa Barbara County Wine Improvement District and give consent to include the city of Santa Barbara in that established district. So that's what you're actually voting on today. But to give you some background as to the benefits of the district, I'd like to welcome up Allison Laslett with the Santa Barbara Ventures. She's going to walk through a presentation for you to give you more information.
Thank you.
Very good.
Mayor Rouse, council members, thank you so much for having us. I'm Allison Laslett. I'm the CEO of the Santa Barbara Vintners Association. We are a membership organization, and that was serendipitous that Kathy's presentation was just before ours, because I feel that you have a concept of what a business improvement district is and have seen it in action. So next slide, please. What is a wine business improvement district? So it's a geographical location. These are often wine regions. Santa Barbara County is a wine region. We have within it 7 AVAs, but the entire county is considered a region. That's why Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors is the lead jurisdiction on this particular proposal. But business improvement districts are designed to increase sales through marketing, attract visitors, engage and educate the community, the industry, and the government, and in our case, to build the region's high-quality wine reputation. Next slide, please. There are currently 3 wine business improvement districts in California. They're in Temecula, Livermore, and Amador County. We also have Paso Robles, Sonoma considering it, Monterey, and Santa Cruz pursuing it. We expect that this will be the status quo of funding for vintners associations going forward. One of the hallmarks of these is that it removes the annual dues that the vintners have to pay, and the assessment replaces that for them. Next slide, please. So why the wine bid for Santa Barbara County? The primary reason is that it's predictable and stable funding, and we have seen at the association how funding helps our visitation. The Vintners Association received over a period of about 3 years, $800,000 in grants. This was they ran from 2020, which was an awkward start time, to 2023. But what we did is we wound up targeting people who were at their computers for COVID, who then could visit Santa Barbara as soon as that was released. We targeted Los Angeles and Southern California, which you heard from Kathy's presentation is where more than half of our visitors come from. So we were able to really benefit from those marketing dollars and increase visitation to the wine region. As a result, if you measure our 5-year growth in sales from 2018 to 2022, we had an increase of 48.8% in sales in Santa Barbara County during that period of time. So while we can attribute the increase of sales to many different things, we certainly can attribute it to the targeted marketing that we did with that $800,000. This is what prompted us to then go and pursue a wine business improvement district. We expect this district to bring in approximately $1.5 million annually, and we know what those dollars will be able to accomplish. Temecula, after they established their wine bid, saw an 18% increase in visitation from September 2022 to September 2023. This is when other regions had begun their decline. They saw the increase in visitation. They had $1.7 million in their annual assessment funding their marketing efforts. So we have seen this be successful in other regions. It's not just a projection for ours. Next slide, please. So what is the assessment? Hint, it is not a tax. It is often confused with a tax. It's important to know the difference. Taxes tend to fund government efforts. This is an industry-led initiative that will fund the industry's success and promotion. In our case, it's a 1% assessment on all direct-to-consumer sales. Direct-to-consumer is the primary driver of revenue in Santa Barbara County for the wine industry. In this case, it will be on retail sales. So those are any sales out of the wineries and tasting rooms that incur California sales tax. So if you were to buy a wine opener, a case of wine, join the wine club, or a sweatshirt, it would all have the 1% assessment on it. This is actually by design. We did this because it is a much more auditable and payable number for the wineries and for the business improvement district. Note that our assessment does not include wholesale, and it does not include any sales outside the state of California. So this $1.5 million that we would collect annually, how would that be spent? Marketing, brand awareness, PR. I feel like we could point to Kathy's presentation and see a lot of how it would be spent. Events in the wine industry are very important. Community engagement and community education for our own industry as well as the community. I want to note that we have a foundation that does our philanthropic work. We had a wine auction in November that raised almost $900,000 for our vineyard workers. So philanthropy is not included in this particular effort, but we do have a charitable fundraising arm of our association that is actively doing that. This assessment also includes funding that has to be spent on programs that benefit the payors. So that's important. It will not go to fund promotion of anything outside programs that don't benefit the vintners, but it will allow us to partner with organizations like Visit Santa Barbara, Visit the Santa Ynez Valley. We sometimes are caught a little flat-footed because we don't have the funding to partner with them in the way that we would like to. Next slide, please. how the money moves. So this is important. The winery may pay the assessment themselves. So in this instance, it's the winery that is assessed. They can pass it along to the consumer, but they are not obliged to. There's a third-party firm that we will hire outside of the county called HDL, and you may be familiar with this consulting firm already. The county has a contract with HDL to collect their taxes. So this is part of why we want to use this organization, this consulting firm, is that they have access to the tax data and will be able to audit the collection of this assessment and make sure that every winery is paying its fair share. This was important to the vintners, that if everybody was on board, then everybody really was on board and was contributing equally to the assessment. So HDL will collect the assessment. They will take a 2% administration fee, and they will pay it back to the Santa Barbara Vintners Association. We will then implement our programs according to the management district plan, which is the plan that we submitted to the county. And HDL will also serve as the collections firm. They do this already. That's their expertise and not something anybody else needs to do if any of the wineries were not to pay. Next slide, please. We have 60% of the wine industry that has signed petitions for the Wine Business Improvement District in support of this district. The law requires that you have 50% or more. I am proud that we have 60% or more. It's very hard to get that number of people to vote for anything. These days, particularly an assessment on their own industry. So I feel confident in that number and glad that we have a significant majority of the industry in support of this. The wineries in support of this literally range from our very smallest winery to our very largest winery. So this is something that appeals to all different sizes of business in the wine industry. It's a collective effort driven by the wine industry to better themselves. Next slide, please. We also have support from the hospitality industry. I think you've heard today how these industries are inextricably linked. We do work with restaurants, obviously, hotels, and a lot of tourism businesses. I think that you received letters of support from each of those entities who are interested in seeing the wine industry be able to promote themselves more. It will benefit those industries as well. Next slide, please. So I think that's it, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have about this particular initiative.
Very good. Questions? Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saw that Lompoc City voted against it. Can you elaborate as to what their logic behind that was?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I wish I thought there were a little more logic involved in it. So that was an interesting scenario. Lompoc is so steeped in the wine community, it's important to know they have 5 council members. 2 of them had to recuse themselves. So now we were down to 3 council members. Because this is a vote on the movement of money, if you will, any tax vote or assessment by a city council requires a majority of the full council regardless of any recusals. Therefore, we needed 3 votes in support of this. We had 2. So typically, you would assume the people who were in support or working in the wine industry might have been in support, but it was a very unusual circumstance where 1 no vote was able to remove an entire city from this initiative.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thanks.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, and thank you for your presentation. I think I know the answer to this, but I want to clarify. This is just to be able to let the vote proceed for vintners to decide whether to assess themselves or not. This wouldn't be council making a decision to go forward with that assessment.
Well, you were granting consent to the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, who next week will make that vote to form the district. So it is opting in the city of Santa Barbara County to this assessment district.
I'm
Council
sorry,
members,
I
that
thought it
is-
was to be able to vote on whether they're going to assess
So
themselves.
the ballot process is transpiring at the county level, similar to how we do our business privilege district. So the ballots, I'm sorry, have already been sent out. So next week at the Board of Supervisors, they'll be tabulating the votes and whether or not it moves forward. Today, you're voting on whether the city of Santa Barbara will be included in that.
By being included, do you mean that we are saying
So
yes, or that we're allowing?
We're
our-
allowing
our-
when the county counts the votes,
Yes.
that Santa Barbara City wineries would be included in the district. So this is my understanding, if the city did not vote, then next week, all of the city of Santa Barbara votes would be removed, and we would not be part of the district, and those wineries would not participate.
Thank you. So that clarifies. So if we vote yes, it's just allowing the votes that have already happened, allowing them to be counted. We're not ourselves voting yes or no. It's just to allow people who have already voted for their vote to be counted. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Are there any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. And now we can move to the speakers. There's some rather familiar names here for all of those who really enjoy the products that you guys make. I'm one of those. And we'll start out now with Ashley Parker Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I've been coming here a really long time, and I didn't used to have to wear glasses, but I do now. My name is Ashley Parker Snyder, and I'm here to speak in support of the wine bid. Our family's been making wine in Los Olivos since 1989. Fest Parker Winery was the 11th winery admitted into the Santa Barbara County Vintners Association. Everyone in this room and everyone on the dais knows what a gem Santa Barbara is, both as a city and as a wine region. But believe it or not, there are still folks out there who don't. And to make matters more difficult, as of late, the wine industry has been facing headwinds in the form of seemingly endless road construction and traffic on Highway 101, changing consumption patterns and competition from other wine regions such as Paso Robles, Temecula, and obviously Sonoma and Napa. It's competitive out there. We need to get the word out that we grow and make world-class Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Syrah, and that we still have more stop signs than stoplights. As Allison mentioned, the grant money does make a huge business. And as you well know, the wine business is an integral part of our collective local economy. For every dollar spent at a winery, it's estimated that $10 is spent in other retail businesses, restaurants, and hotels in the county. So now is not the time for us to walk away from any tools that will help us promote and compete in a hyper-competitive industry. The 1% assessment on retail sales will provide a consistent source of funding that will enable all of the vintners included in the bid, including the Funk Zone, to compete for the hearts, minds, and dollars of wine-focused travel and consumers, and to bolster the overall economic success of Santa Barbara as a whole. And incidentally, my family's been in the hotel business here in Santa Barbara since 1985, and I think that this bid will work in a very complementary fashion with the good work that Kathy Janega-Dykes does at Visit Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas Miller.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members on this beautiful rainy day. We are starting to see sprinkles as I came in. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to hear about the wine bid. This is something that the Santa Barbara vendors are very passionate about. My name is Nicholas Miller, and my family has lived here in Santa Barbara for many generations, and we started farming here on the central coast of California just after statehood. Here in downtown Santa Barbara, my family operates a taste room for our boutique winery, the J. Wilkes Winery in the Hotel California. And in addition to that winery, our family also, through our vineyards and running a custom crush facility, have worked with some of the largest wineries in this region, as well as some of the smallest and most boutique. And so with our customer base really representing what we think is the Santa Barbara County wine industry, We truly believe that this is the right next step forward. We believe that this will help us provide the rising tide to lift all ships. As you heard Ashley reference, the wine industry on a whole right now, unfortunately, is under an enormous amount of pressure. And it is indeed shrinking in a very significant way. We as a county here in Santa Barbara have been chronically underfunded in getting our word out and being able to talk about ourselves as the world-class wine region that we are. You heard Ashley and Allison both reference that we've had these bright spots where we've been able to come across grants that allowed us to amplify that voice. But unfortunately, the very nature of grants is they're limited in time and resources, and when they expired, we were not able to continue that good work. And so if we aren't able to find a better way to fund Santa Barbara, I'm worried that we'll get passed up. So in closing, I'd like to ask all the vendors that are here today to stand up, because I think it's important for all of you to see this visual representation. And I'd like to introduce them by who they aren't. These are not outside investors. These are not people that are coming from afar. These are people that literally plant their roots to be here. And if this industry shrinks and goes away, I want to ask who will fill that hole, who will backfill those jobs, who will bring in those tourists, who will preserve that land from development, and who will respond to the constant requests to provide a location for fundraising and the wine that we give to the nonprofits here in Santa Barbara County. Thank you all for your consideration in making Santa Barbara better.
Becky Barrio-Wathan.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. I am Becky Barrio-Wathan. I'm a co-owner of Fox & Winery, which is located up over the hill in wine country. I'm a former resident of Santa Barbara, but I currently live in Solvang. The funds that will be available to the Santa Barbara vintners through the Wine Business Improvement District will benefit the local wine industry, yes, but it will also benefit the entire hospitality industry. Is this right for me? The entire hospitality industry of Santa Barbara County and the city of Santa Barbara. The vintners will be in a position to build a marketing partnership with Visit Santa Barbara focused on tourism. We know the good work that they're doing, and we're eager to become a partner with them. So that will be a win-win for everybody. And as you consider your vote on this Wine Business Improvement District, think of us as your partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Britt Zodovich.
Thank you, council members, for taking the time to allow so many of us passionate winemakers the opportunity to speak today. My name is Britt Zodovich. I own a small winery, Dreamcoat Wine Company, in Los Olivos. We make sparkling and still wine solely from Santa Barbara County grapes. I want to encourage a yes vote on including the city of Santa Barbara in the bid. The cost is nothing to you. The payoff is huge. I second all of the previous speakers regarding Visit Santa Barbara and the power of marketing dollars and their efficacy in bringing traffic, the importance of tourism to the city and this beautiful wine region. Wine is just one part of all that makes up Santa Barbara tourism. As locals, we're very familiar with this wine region. You've all no doubt seen all of the Santa Barbara County wines on restaurant menus. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to sample some of them. The region is spectacular. We have this amazing maritime influence. It is a premier wine growing region. Sadly, much of the wine consuming population in the world and also in the United States has no idea this is the case. It sounds crazy, right? I mean, you'd think this is so obvious to us. We live here, we see the beauty of the ocean and how the weather patterns really affect the wine growing. They know Napa, they know France, they know Italy, and this is where marketing will help us. In the last presentation, Visit Santa Barbara and all of the business owner speakers that followed, it was very evident that the marketing dollars have really provided a lot of traffic. So I just want to leave you with this. The marketing is really needed to drive traffic. That traffic drives sales. The revenue generated also drives taxes, job creation, community investment, both direct and indirect. A lot of these winery owners, we donate time, money, bottles for auctions, silent auctions, that benefit amazing art programs and beautiful community investment. So this bid stands to benefit member wineries, community programs, and a huge number of local businesses. When tourists come to visit, they eat and they stay and they come back. I encourage you to imagine the tourism possibilities and to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for squeezing that in. I think you probably had a 3-minute speech for that. Sunshine Stricker, I believe.
Mayor and council people, thanks so much for hearing us today. I'm Sunny Dench-Stricker. I'm the owner and winemaker of Future Perfect, a tiny little winery up in Los Olivos, and also vice president of the board of Women Winemakers and Culinarians Foundation. Karen Steinwachs, the president, is zooming in to watch this today as well, and is the owner and winemaker for an even smaller winery called Sea Grape, also up in Los Olivos. My husband and I lived in Los Angeles for 100 years, where, like proper winos, we drove up to Paso Robles, never knowing that Santa Barbara County had such an extraordinary region for wine, until a winery up there told us, "Have you never been to Los Olivos?" And we were like, "What is this magical land you speak of?" And made our way through on our way back to LA, where we were stunned. 7 years ago when we moved here, and I was lucky enough to become a winemaker, and realize how extraordinary it is, the transverse mountain range, the only place in the northern continent, how we get to grow almost every varietal in the world and make the very best wines in the world, and that people don't even know. I mean, Temecula has the bit, guys, and I'm not mad at Temecula, I'm just saying the wines of Santa Barbara County that people don't know globally about this wine region and get to taste all the delish we make is just a crime. And so I'm so hopeful that you will cast your yes vote for the bid that we so sorely need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Brooke Christian.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, my name is Brooke Christian. I'm one of the proprietors at Longoria Wines. To keep this pretty brief, what Kathy said about a sense of place, couldn't have related to that more in terms of the interrelationship between visiting a place. My wife and I visited many years ago, decided to get married here in 2013 from the East Coast. Later, in 2022, we took over Longoria Wines, which is a brand with 40 years of history in the area. So the relationship and the cycle between those three things, visiting a place, really committing to live in a place, and doing business there is certainly not lost on us. To Britt's comments earlier, I think one of the things I love about Santa Barbara is what a hidden gem it is. But I would also say, at least in terms of a wine region, it's a bit of I'd call it a speakeasy. It's a really cool place for the people who know about it, but a great number of people don't necessarily know about it. And so one of the things this bid would do would help raise the profile of the people who do know about it and not just keep it a hidden secret. I think in my old life in the corporate world, we would view the wine industry as what I would call a loss leader. So a great number of these people in the room today are committed because they love what they do and they love Santa Barbara. They're not necessarily committed to the money they make and the profitability they make from that. And I think all of the citizens and all of the region very much benefits from that commitment, and that's a huge part of why we'd like to see this happen. So to another quick point, 22 seconds. Just in terms of being competitive, you saw the bounce that Temecula got. I think if Paso gets this, Sonoma gets this, we're certainly going to be digging ourselves a hole. So we'd like to stay in a competitive place and put things on a far better track. So just respectfully, humbly, and gratefully, we ask for your support in terms of considering what we have today. And please, consider this in earnest. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ Fairbanks.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. My name is AJ Fairbanks. I am the estate director of Crown Point Vineyards, just up the hill in San Ynez Valley. More importantly, I stand in front of you as somebody who was born and raised in Santa Barbara, Cottage Hospital, March 11th, 1977. And graduated from high school here and had the privilege to come back and work in this industry after previously working for 10 years in Napa and Sonoma. My colleagues in this room have done a fantastic job covering a lot the interconnectivity of our industry into the cities and the towns that comprise this county and our valley. I just wanted to share a little bit of the history of Santa Barbara City and its relevance to the wine industry, more specifically the history. When they excavated the Casa de la Guerra, they came across a gold medal to the 1876 Philadelphia Centennial Fair. And that medal was awarded to the de la Guerra family for winemaking. And I think that that really demonstrates the history and the reach of it all, that we're not just confined to this little valley, we're not just confined to our vineyards, that we think of it not just as municipal barriers, but we transcend all of that. Our fruit that we grow in the valley, that supports your municipal winemakers in the Funk Zone. And being someone that grew up in Santa Barbara and was born here in 1977, maybe some of you also remember what the Funk Zone was before it became the true Funk Zone. And it was wineries that had a hand in really rejuvenating that little, just what is an incredible piece of Santa Barbara now. So just wanted to share that and appreciation for your consideration today. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Sarlos.
Hello, Mayor and Council. How are you doing today? One of the things I wanted to bring forth to you guys is the fact that when you think of a wine industry, you think of big, huge, monolithic things. And the truth of the matter is the San Ynez Valley and Santa Barbara in particular, we're all very small. We're small families. And the small family farm is actually what you're voting for today. The fact that vines or fruit leaves Santa Barbara County and goes north is a lost opportunity. When I think of Santa Barbara County and specifically Santa Barbara, if you guys vote yes, which I desperately hope you do, you will benefit disproportionately more than the wine industry itself. The fact that we're open from maybe 11 to 5 and we're doing everything we can to tell everybody over that hill that we're here, everybody down in Southern California, and they come in, spend a few dollars with us, but they're going to have to stay places. They're going to have to visit Santa Barbara. They're going to have to eat. They're going to have to go to coffee shops and buy things. We are a very small portion of what we're asking for. But a vote from you guys, a vote to be included, to say yes, so we can say on every single map that Santa Barbara Vintners Association, it's in the name. When you vote yes today, you are giving a chance for small family businesses to continue, for multi-generational businesses to continue, so we can feed more and more people. Thank you, guys, and I really appreciate your yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Janes.
Thank you, Mayor and the Santa Barbara Council members. My name is Stephen, and this is my 32nd year in the wine industry, with the majority of that time spent in Santa Barbara wine country. I'm the estate director for Gainey Vineyards, which is family owned and operated and is very involved in the local community. We are 100% in support of the wine bid. The formation of this will be a defining moment in our industry because we will finally be able to promote Santa Barbara wine country to consumers around the world. We're truly the David and the David versus Goliath story in California wine. The Santa Barbara Vintners' total yearly budget is around $400,000 compared to Napa Valley, who has a $10 million operating budget. I want to switch to a few other important data points. The wine industry wants to actually apply a 1% self-assessment on direct-to-consumer sales. This is not a government tax, but an industry group of wine professionals trying to organize together to better fund themselves. The cost is very small and averages roughly 42 cents per bottle or 11 cents per glass. There are 325 actual wineries in Santa Barbara County. 165 of these wineries have DTC sales of less than $100,000 per year and represent only 6% of the total winery revenue in Santa Barbara County. The other 160 wineries here provide over $165 million in annual sales to you. I would further add that over 100 of these 160 wineries are members of the Santa Barbara Vintners. Issues like this are never unanimous, and with 60% of the economic weight already behind it, it's definitely moving in the great direction. And lastly, we have referred to ourselves as Santa Barbara Wine Country and the Santa Barbara Vintners for the last 41 years. It would be super unfortunate for Santa Barbara to not be a part of this. There are serious headwinds facing the industry. We have dry January, sober October. Young adults are discovering other alcoholic beverages, and even the U.S. Surgeon General is warning about the health benefits of wine. I deeply believe that rising tides lift all boats, and I think the smallest producers will actually benefit the most from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Ostini. Appearing in disguise today.
No pith helmet. How you doing? Thank you for listening to us. Hitching Post Restaurant, Casmelia, since 1952. We went to Buellton in 1986, and my first marketing move was to join the Santa Barbara Vintners Association because I wanted to promote my restaurant through the wine business. And that's what we're talking about, the wine business promoting our region. Let's look at the arithmetic. Santa Barbara Winery is about 14% of the retail sales in Santa Barbara County. Most of the business is coming from wineries outside of Santa Barbara, but that'll raise about $200,000 of that budget. That they can't do much with that money by themselves, but as all the vintners together, which we're trying to do, we can do a lot. So if in fact $10 is spent for every $1 spent in a winery, I'm gonna pay 1 cent for $10 work being economy coming into our region. Don't let Santa Barbara be excluded from this. Santa Barbara is important to all of us vintners. We're proud of what happens in Santa Barbara, and we're proud to be a part of the Santa Barbara region. So please let Santa Barbara be part of the Santa Barbara Vintners. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Rossini?
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members and members of staff. Thank you all so much for all the time and effort that you're putting into listening to all of these stories. My name is Katie Grassini, and I am CEO of our family's winery, Grassini Family Vineyards. We're located downtown in the El Paseo building. As the owner of the downtown Santa Barbara tasting room, I join the majority of our industry peers here in supporting this bid. Since 2010, I've had the pleasure of serving on the boards of Visit Santa Barbara, Downtown Santa Barbara, the Vintners Association, and the Vintners Foundation. And the reason that I bring this up is because my experience on all of these different boards have shown me just how much of a challenge we have in promoting our incredible region against these other very, very well-funded regions. And while I appreciate the concerns that you may be hearing about the effect of different existing T-bids and C-bids and sales taxes on our businesses, I still feel that this wine bid is extremely necessary. We've heard the amazing work that Kathy and her colleagues are doing with the T-bid fund. I know that the downtown organization is going to do great with the C-bid, but these dollars are going to go specifically to support the wine industry and to get to those targeted consumers that we need. Our family opened our winery, we planted it we bought it in the 80s, planted it in the early 2000s, and we opened the winery doors in 2010. And it wasn't until we opened our tasting room in downtown Santa Barbara in the El Paseo when people actually started to know who we were. And people then wanted to come up and visit us in San Ynez. And we've just seen it grow. And I would love to see other folks have that opportunity. And I would love to see downtown Santa Barbara be a part of this. So thank you so much and appreciate it.
Thank you. Chase Carhart.
The last 10 seconds. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Chase Carhart, and I'm here representing my family's business, which is Carhart Family Wines out of the San Ynez Valley. And also, I'm serving as a current board member of the Santa Barbara County Vintners Association. Just for a little bit of context, I don't know how loud I'm speaking. For a little bit of context, I'm a third-generation farmer and a second-generation grape grower and winemaker in the San Ynez Valley. In general, of course, but specifically regarding this wine bid, I've had many passionate conversations with my business partners, who I say proudly are my parents. Together, we firmly believe that this wine bid represents not just the best interest and opportunity for our business specifically, but also for the entire Santa Barbara County wine industry, as you've heard. There's a lot of data, a lot of granular data, a lot of big data. It's important to know all that. My family's business, our vineyard and winery operation, is 100% direct to consumer, with the majority of our sales occurring within California. And so I say that to say that a large percentage of our small business's income will be directly assessed by this wine bid. I think that's an important factor that my family and I have considered over the course of time. And I say this not to diminish the impact or opinion of any other local wine brand, but to emphasize the serious commitment and thoughtful discussions that have gone into my family's support for this initiative. My parents and I truly believe it will help secure a strong future for our local wine industry and, quite frankly, and obviously, all of the Santa Barbara County businesses that directly or indirectly benefit from tourism. Thank you very, very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have speakers online.
We have one speaker online, Karen Steinwalks. Karen Steinwalks, please go ahead.
There we go. Okay. Hello, council members, Mayor Rouse, and staff, and all of my fellow vintners there. I'm zooming in from Florida, where I'm house dog sitting and watching my wily 91-year-old mother. I am that person that the charts always talk about from the smallest wineries. I believe I am the smallest winery. I make, on a good year when Mother Nature is being benevolent, about 500 cases of wine a year that is made in Lompoc. I have only myself as employee staff. I do not have a tasting room. I farm a little acre of grapes myself in Los Olivos, and I'm very lucky to have an agreement with the Hibbett's Ranch in Lompoc for 2.5 acres of grapes there. I'm only able to sell wine within the state of California, so obviously having people come up from Los Angeles, where I also used to live, is really of great benefit to me and to the entire community. The other thing is that there's often a bit of misinformation that's going around that says that this is going to benefit the larger wineries more so than smaller wineries, and I in fact think that's quite the opposite. First of all, I belong to the Vintners Association and I belong to the Santa Rita Hills Wine Growers Alliance, even though that cost me a few dollars per case. But even so, I couldn't afford to have a PR agency, a marketing agency, be on websites, have all the contacts with the outside world that I do without belonging to those two organizations. And then once this bid passes, I'm taking the positive approach to that, then every one of the members of the association will have equal standing, and everyone will have one place at the table. So it will be per winery, one vote. And if anyone thinks that is undemocratic, then I'm not sure how they're doing the math. So I wish you well from the state of Florida, where it is not raining, and I have to get back very soon, flying into that fabulous SBA. And I do ask for your vote and appreciate your time.
Thank you. We have one late entry here personally. We have Kathy Janega-Dykes.
Mayor Rouse, members of the council, my name is Kathy Janega-Dykes, and I'm president and CEO of Visit Santa Barbara. And I, too, am here to express my strong support for the Santa Barbara County Wine Improvement District. You already heard so many positive reasons for these very passionate wine representatives about why it's so important for doing so. Our own Tourism Business Improvement District, as you heard earlier, has been such a remarkable success, funded entirely by the visitors, not the local taxpayers. So the proposed wine bid operates on the same principle. It is not a tax. It is the visitor or the consumer that is leveraging those visitor contributions that support the economic vitality of our region. As the largest city in Santa Barbara County, and certainly the gateway to the wine region, our participation and support are so critical. Not only will this wine bid support those tasting rooms that are located here within the city of Santa Barbara, but many of our visitors that stay in Santa Barbara hotels actually travel to the wine region. They extend their stay so that they can enjoy wine tasting in the area. So it's so critical for our tourism industry. This is really a vote for the economic health of our city and a valuable opportunity to promote Santa Barbara really as a world-class wine destination.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to council. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I I'm very happy to support moving this forward and happy to make the motion for staff recommendation. I think when industries can assess themselves and then have agency of how those assessments are used, I think we get really better outcomes and results. And I'm always amazed at industries that are willing to not ask what others can do for them, but what they can do for themselves through their own assessments of themselves. So I say congratulations to you that you're willing to do that and have the collective vision for that, and that you're all here also speaks to that you're a unified body who will all benefit. And so I'm very happy to move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Well, I've got that first. Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be happy to second that motion. I'll
Now we have a
echo
second.
everything Councilmember Sneddon said. We've seen how successful bids can be in other arenas, and I wish the wine bid all the same success. And I certainly would not want our local Santa Barbara winemakers left out of that. So very happy to second the motion, and of course we'll be voting yes.
Thank you. So, Ms. Gorman, you have the first and second on that. Thank you very much. Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of it as well. I just hope that you all spend a little more time and put in a little more effort to voice the benefits of your business for your workforce. Because I come from a family that came here to work picking fruit and grapes, and I think it's important to make sure that you represent them in some way. So I hope that with this revenue that you could do that. So I'll be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll join in the support, and I'd like to thank all of you. I'm sure most of you, this is not where you imagine yourself spending an afternoon. Some of you should be out in the soil, I can tell. So, I joke with my friends. I knock on the door and say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Well, today we are, and we should help you by supporting this and just getting out of the way and letting you do this. Anytime a group is willing to assess themselves for the betterment of themselves and the community, we should just get out of the way and let that happen. I thank you for the second time today. I get to hear, first was from me, the second one was from you on rising tides and raising all boats. And I definitely agree with you that every bid that I've been associated with or worked on, from both the downtown ones now, the old one and the new one, Coast Village. I was in the room for some of the discussions on the T-bid. They do all have a disproportionate better benefit to the smaller participants than they do to the very large ones that are paying much more into that process. So happy to support this. I hope too that if you're looking for a partner to resolve that decades-old erosion of dollars and staffing that goes out of county for your processing, they take it up north and won't let you have processing on your own properties here in the county. I would think you would find willing partnership with the city also to work on the county with you and bring those jobs back to this county and bring those dollars back into this county. So if you're interested in that, I'm a willing partner if you ever want to get past this and start on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Friedman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all of my colleagues and in full support of this. First, just want to thank all the winemakers. I'm glad you all stood up. It was very powerful to see a lot of local, long-term families here. You know, our wine industry is magical. I can't remember the last time a group of people came and said, we are asking you not to tax us, but we are going to grow the heck out of your tax base. And so you got my support on that. Just a couple things that I learned. One is the 1-2 punch with Visit Santa Barbara and the marketing. It'll complement each other. It'll make us a lot stronger. As a whole county, it brings us together at South County, North County, and we all rely on each other. We're one county, so anything we can do to showcase that. And then also, one of the speakers pointed out that with Sonoma, Paso Robles, Santa Cruz all considering this, which means they're probably going to go for it, if to your credit, doing it now and being proactive. If you waited a year or two, you would have been further and further behind because they would have already had that marketing out, and a lot of times you're going to get those repeat customers that we won't even have a shot at, but this puts you in a much better position. And then, I do want to say, I think it was Mr. Fairbanks, I also was born in 1977 and grew up in the county. So another fact I learned today is that apparently being a politician makes you age twice as fast as a winemaker. And so I'm going to wrap up by saying today it's raining. It was noted by some of you. So I am in full support. And when you pass this, just remember that you're turning today's water into tomorrow's wine. Yeah. Thank you.
How do you beat that? Ms. Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I'll keep this brief, but I am fully in support and just want to briefly thank you all for spending your time here. We can clearly see how important this is, and I think the partnerships both between our vendors and then also, you know, Visit Santa Barbara and everyone else. I mean, I think that this is exactly the way that we can move our community forward and we can stimulate our local economy. I think in light of recent events at every level of our country, I think it's more imperative than ever that we are stimulating this local economy. I do share Councilmember Gutierrez's slight concerns about just making sure that we take care of the workforce that keeps this work going. But I also believe that in order for you to do that, this bid is a really good first step. And so I'm fully in support. I won't take up any more time because I'm sure y'all want to get out of here. So yeah, let's do this.
Thank you. Well, a few of you mentioned how much this relates to the rest of the city, and is absolutely true. I know in my business, many of the people in this room were a big part of my business for a lot of years. I just hope I don't owe anybody any money still. But it is a real synergy to bring people up for whatever they're doing. The wine industry there was a handful of wineries when I started my business. There's a zillion of you guys now. A lot of great small boutique wineries that are fabulous small farm families that are producing amazing products that are known all over the world. So this is an easy one for me. So thank you. And with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any more discussion about the motion? Madam Clerk, can we have the vote, please?
Okay, yes, motion by Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Harmon. Please go ahead and vote.
Ooh, photo finish. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay, very good. Madam Clerk, would you read the next item, please?
Yes, item 12, Title 25, Objective Design and Development Standards and amendments to the Title 30 zoning ordinance introduction. Recommendation the council, A, introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by adding Title 25, Objective Design and Development Standards. B, introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by amending chapters 30.15, 30.140, 30.145, 30.205, 30.220, 30.250, 30.295, and 30.300 pertaining to regulations for objective design and development standards and miscellaneous cleanups. And C, repeal resolution number 21031, adopting the objective design and development standards for streamlined housing projects in its entirety.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we want to take a quick break? 5 minutes, let everyone clear out? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break just to let everyone clear out of the chambers.
We may, and we'll start out with our presentation, which is, Rosie?
Mr. Isaacson was going to introduce the item.
Okay. And you are on, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, members of council. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we will be discussing the Title 25 Objective Design and Development Standards. As you know, staff's been working on this project for quite a while, many, many months. And, you know, the ODDS that we're presenting today really is the outcome of much public engagement and community input. The standards, the design and development standards reflect and honor the rich architectural history and development patterns of the city. And we think the standards really capture the essence of Santa Barbara architecture. As many of you know, we're not working on this issue alone. Numerous California communities have adopted or are working to adopt objective design standards for their communities, especially around issues with multifamily housing. Planners around the state are talking to each other. And as such, we are really committed to making our objective design development standards a living document. And we're committing to reevaluating our program over the course of the next 2 years and coming back with amendments based off the feedback we're getting from applicants and other stakeholders in the community about the usability and effectiveness of this program. So with that said, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Rosie Dicey so she can discuss the ODDS in more detail. Also presenting today is Tony Perez from Opticos Design. Opticos helped us develop these standards that we're discussing today. He was an integral member of the consultant team and has worked on similar design development standards for other communities in California. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Rosie.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me here today. The components of the project before you are municipal code amendments. We have the brand new Title 25 Objective Design and Development Standards. Sometimes we call them ODDS, and amendments to the Title 30 zoning ordinance. The format of my presentation today would be, I will be starting with a little bit of information of why we did this project and a general overview. Then I will hand it over to Tony Perez of Opticos. He's going to focus on who they are, their approach and intent to creating these standards, and walk you through a guide to using them. Then it'll come back to me briefly for the end to wrap up the Title 30 amendments, other actions, and recommendation. So I'll start with why we created objective design standards. The overall goals for the project are really to increase predictability in the design review process for applicants, and also that helps staff. While doing that, though, we want to promote our city as a livable city. So that's a focus on pedestrian-oriented design and other aspects that make this such a great place to live. while also respecting the context of our very historic city that's pretty much built out at this stage, has lots of historic resources and really interesting and beautiful neighborhoods. Also create a visual language. So this new title before you today is very different from the rest of our municipal code. It has lots of graphics and diagrams and photographs to help applicants go through the process and conform with the standards. We're also doing this to comply with state law. So in California, Senate Bill 35 is really the first bill that was passed a few years back that provided a streamlined ministerial approval process for projects that are consistent with objective development and design standards. And since then, there's been multiple state laws passed that provide this process for projects that want to go that route. So increasingly, we're seeing the state tell us you can't use design guidelines anymore. You have to use measurable objective standards when you're looking at multi-unit residential. This is also implementing our housing element that was just certified last year. Key program HE7, Objective Design Standards, and the intent was to have an alternative to conventional zoning for developers who are seeking a streamlined design review process. We also want to do this to provide more certainty and consistency for our applicants and staff so they know what requirements apply. The standards are measurable and verifiable, and the same rules would apply no matter who is reviewing the project. Next, I'm going to switch over to a more overview of the project. So before I go further, I just want to clarify what an objective standard is. It means there's no personal or subjective judgment by a public official. It's uniformly verifiable by reference to an external benchmark or criterion. So we have lots of design guidelines in our city. They tend to be subjective and they're full of recommendations. And as such, they're open to interpretation. They use the terms should and may, and they're adopted by resolution. Whereas standards, of course, have to be objective. They're requirements, they're measurable. We use the terms shall and must, and they're adopted by ordinance. However, there will be two design review options for projects seeking project design approval for residential development. So the subjective design review process will still be available, and that's for applicants who want to use that process, who maybe have a design that doesn't fit in the design standards. They want to do something very different and outside the box, or some architects really like getting the peer review that they get from design review and improving their projects. So that process is still there. The objective process would be for applicants who choose to comply with Title 25 odds and then use the objective design review process. Where this will apply in the city are the areas in green on the map. And the areas in green are zoned to allow 2 or more residential units. So as long as it's a multi-unit residential project or mixed use, they can use the objective standards and the objective design review process. All the other areas of the city you're seeing in white are either zoned for single-family development, or it might be parks or institutional uses. As Mr. Isaacson mentioned, this has been in the process for quite a while. We got a $300,000 grant from the State Department of Housing and Community Development to do this project back in 2021. There's been multiple drafts available for public review. We've had many work group meetings. I'll mention the work group in a moment and who they are. Community engagement and multiple public hearings to get us where we are today. So some of the major milestones includes 5 drafts have been available for public review, 10 meetings of the work group, 6 meetings with Architectural Board of Review and Historic Landmarks Commission, 2 community surveys, and we've given 5 or more presentations before the American Institute of Architects, Habitat for Humanity, and also to developers. The work group was instrumental, absolutely, in this project, and they worked with us throughout the process and provided input to staff and advice and really good suggestions. They're made up of members of the Planning Commission, the Architectural Board of Review, Historic Landmarks Commission, and American Institute of Architects that you see here on this slide. Couldn't have done it without them. I just want to highlight a couple more things about our community engagement. We have a dedicated web page, and on that web page, we've prepared 2 fact sheets and a video describing the project. Again, I mentioned there's been a couple of surveys, lots of input, in particular on the architectural styles map, the presentations I already mentioned, and outreach, some of which was done by Opticos and some of which done by staff or both of us together. I'm going to focus just a little bit on some of the recent feedback and changes we made. This is described in your council agenda report, and your attachments, I believe it's 1 through 4, kind of show you exactly what was changed. So this has come about since we went to the Planning Commission in the summer, and through their comments and ordinance committee, we've made multiple amendments to the architectural styles map. We've included definitions specific to odds back into the Title 25. At Planning Commission suggestion, we met with developers, and also Ordinance Committee asked that we meet with HCD. And we've also committed to returning after adoption with status reports and amendments, as the project moves along. We got input from staff and public, and throughout that, we've made some changes to courtyard standards to clarify courtyards can be in any configuration. And we've made some amendments to what's known as the mixed-use corridor zone and the zone map. That's to better align the Title 25 odds with incentives that people get under Title 30. And finally, that with some state input through HCD and Coastal Commission, HCD did ask us to clarify a reference we made to the Housing Accountability Act, so that change has been made and is in your packet. They also agreed that we should ensure that the standards in Title 25 are appropriately or approximately aligned with Title 30. And Coastal Commission asked us to include some references to the Coastal Land Use Plan, coastal resource protection policies, and through our conversations with them, they've agreed that we don't need to do a local coastal plan amendment to actually make this effective in the coastal zones. So that's good news. That saves a lot of time. Okay, next I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Perez, and he'll talk about their role.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and members of the City Council. I'm Tony Perez with Opticos Design. The office is based in Berkeley. I live in Camarillo, so it was a great drive today to come up here and be in your beautiful city, even in the rain. I'm going to talk about 3 things today. I'm going to introduce you to the firm briefly, talk about the approach and intent supporting your objective standards, and a little overview about applying the objective standards to a project. Who we are. We're urban designers and architects who believe in the transformative power of beautiful, sustainable, walkable communities for all. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, we're urban designers, architects, strategists. Some of the people in the office are strategists. We've been working with cities and counties and developers for over 25 years. We have a lot of experience in the state and nationally on zoning, development, and particularly form-based codes. And that really lends itself to preparing this work for you. Form-based codes are a very good tool to use as a basis for objective standards. Most communities that are preparing objective standards use the platform of form-based zoning code. And then last, we're implementers. Some of us come from the public sector, having worked in planning departments in cities. Some of the people are architects in offices, and others are planners, but we all want to see things done. We want to do things that are effective and useful. The approach and intent supporting your objective standards is simple. It's form-based, and it's based on the existing and intended physical character to be used as new inputs for the standards. And that might sound obvious, but a lot of communities aren't in the situation that Santa Barbara is in. Most communities have to look elsewhere for the kinds of places they want to emulate and become, or to add to themselves. They might have a really good part of town, but another part they're redoing. And so they want to study another place and say, well, let's bring that into our place, into our town. But Santa Barbara is the opposite. You have a place that a lot of people want to be like. And so it was really a lot of fun to prepare the standards here because all we had to do was look here. And so it's about making more of this beautiful place, making more of these beautiful streetscapes and neighborhoods. So the first thing that we did, obviously, was to look at existing conditions and participate in a lot of the outreach events that Rosie mentioned. And we gleaned a lot of information and insights, certainly from those meetings and efforts. But we really put a lot of effort as well in looking at your existing projects, both built and projects that you were reviewing in the review process to understand the kinds of standards you're applying, the way that those standards are interpreted by developers and architects, where there might be need for more clarity, since under the objective standards, there's no discretionary review allowed, so the standards have to speak for themselves. So we looked at a lot of existing projects in planning and on the ground. And then we focused our attention on the size of buildings, the scale of buildings, and a lot of times zoning codes try to get to this, and you certainly get to this in your design review process as you review projects, but zoning codes are largely silent on this topic. And so we looked at all the buildings in Santa Barbara where these standards would be applied, and we sorted buildings into two categories, two general categories. The first being house scale, and as its name suggests, buildings the size of small to large houses. And whether they have 2 units in them or more units, they're still house scale in their footprint, their height, and their width. And the other category is block scale buildings. This beautiful building just down the street here on Anacapa. Block scale buildings are individually or collectively as large as most or all of a block, and they're typically taller than house scale buildings. So knowing which scale of building you're talking about, regardless of density, regardless of floor area ratio, is super important, especially in a place like this, which has such strong existing physical character, and every new thing matters. Next. We looked at that then, sorting it again by architectural style, and you can see here just a snapshot of that analysis, and starting to understand in the middle of the screen an example of the 11 different type of repeating building footprints that we found throughout the neighborhoods and on your main streets, and how they corresponded to architectural style. That then helped us prepare building type and massing standards, and we created a palette of 10 different building types that we saw throughout the community, and 6 massing types. And all these types repeat. They're just arranged differently in different places in different neighborhoods. And those helped us create these standards and organize them to the 5 different areas across Santa Barbara where these standards will be applied, providing a menu of choices for designers. So all designers, all developers have a number of options available depending on the different zones that they're in. That then helped us focus our attention on the public realm, which is a huge aspect of what makes Santa Barbara so popular with visitors and the people that live here as well. It's a beautiful place to live because the streetscapes are so interesting and varied. And so we looked at what made each of those places across all the different neighborhoods and places in Santa Barbara. Everything from how the buildings relate to the street, whether the building is far from the street or close to the street, if it's on a flat site, maybe it's a little steeper site, what type of building frontage it has. Let's say it has a stoop, a porch, maybe a terrace, or if it's on a main street, a shop front, all those different things, and we took those into account. And that helped us prepare this next element, of a key element of the objective standards, building frontage standards. And I have to say, of all my visits to Santa Barbara, the thing that stands out to me is the ground floor. Clearly, your buildings are beautiful, your streetscapes are beautiful, but what really resonates with people and visitors when you're walking around with them, they all remark on how the ground floor, they don't say it this way, they don't say it in architectural language, but they say, wow, this feels good. I can see this into the building. Wow, look at that beautiful front yard, that beautiful facade. And it has everything to do with building frontage, how buildings relate to the street. You've heard that policy statement a lot, but this is a set of standards that actually implements that. And that helped us then, once the ground floor was addressed, we then looked at the overall facades that shape all of your streetscapes, And when you look beyond the individual designs, there's an underlying composition, there's an underlying organization that organizes a facade that an architect designs. And so these standards, there are 6 massing types, basically give guidance to the designer to organize it in a system of bays, their choice, but in a system of vertical bays that they can then provide their creativity on top of that to create their design. And then along with that, the architect then has choices for architectural style. We worked with city staff and the work group pretty closely. In fact, that they did so much work to provide us with insight that we could not have ever had unless studying this place for 10 years. And these meetings and this work culminated in us landing on 6 styles, and those were organized into 3 style groups. And they are the Craftsman group, the Spanish Colonial Revival group, and the Contemporary group. And the reason there are groups is because in each of those groups there's another style. For example, in the Craftsman group, there's also the cottage style. And they share some elements, but there's also some elements that are distinctive, but they're enough to share that we group them. And so that's also a way to help make this document a little more user-friendly. But the other thing to mention here on this slide is you see on the right-hand side, as I'm sure if you've taken a look at these standards or somebody that has delved into them deeply and talked to you and said, wow, there's a lot of detail in here. There is, for 2 reasons. One, it's a set of objective standards that the state says we can't have meetings and make interpretations about, right? So if everything has to be on the paper. But the other one is to try and show the full intent of what each of these styles represents, to be true to it. But if you look closer, not everything that is drawn is regulated. And that's a key thing to remember about all of the standards throughout this whole set, is that a lot of things are drawn fully, but not everything is regulated. And that leaves more interpretation for the designer to have creativity and not straitjacket them into everything having to be a certain way. And all of those standards, they all are aimed at each of these 5 environments, these 5 areas across where these standards will be applied, which we are calling objective standard zones in this set of standards. And each of those zones is analogous to a physical set of characteristics, an environment. For example, State Street is an environment. Haley, Milpas, they're all different places and they have different physical characteristics. And so these standards are aimed at producing buildings that make more of those places, contribute more to it. Quickly going over just an example of how to apply these standards. Go ahead. Clearly there are a lot of steps. Everybody knows that there are a lot of steps in the process of researching and a site, designing a site, and submitting a project for review. I'm going to go through a few steps here, a few large steps. So first of all, like always, you go to your general plan here in Santa Barbara, the land use designation, to understand how many units are allowed for your parcel so that you can apply them to your project. You then look at the objective standard zone map, which has 5 zones here, and you find out where your parcel is located and which set of standards apply to yours. Those standards then have 5 key topics that help you do the first step, which is to design your site and your building form and massing. And these 5 topics here of selecting a building type, applying set building placement standards and vehicle access and parking, and bike parking, and pedestrian access, and open yard and landscape result in a site plan and a building form and massing. Then you activate the streetscape on the same standards, it requiring you to select a building frontage type. And as I mentioned, that is one of the key things that makes Santa Barbara so wonderful. Your streets are filled with buildings that, whether they're residential or commercial or even industrial, they have an entry that you can see from the street. It's welcoming in its own way. The building is designed well between the sidewalk and the street. That is one of the huge aspects that makes Santa Barbara. And these standards will do that. And then you would go to the architectural styles map, find out where your parcel is located, and depending on its location, 1 or more architectural styles are available. The architect, go ahead. The architect would then choose from those available styles. You can see the 3 groups here, and apply that to their building. And once they applied it to their building, building would be complete, the design would be complete, and be ready to submit. And then this last step is simply to show that there's a relief process in here. Because these standards have to be completely prescriptive and say, here's what you have to do. We've learned in writing form-based codes for 25 years that because of that level of prescription, you have to provide internal relief for things that you just can't foresee today that will come up later. So this set of standards includes a chapter specifically about site constraints or site conditions that are other, like a heritage tree or utility in the wrong place that prevents a standard from being complied with 100%. And so this provides a number of situations and gives guidance and direction on how and how much relief to provide in that situation. And that's it. And I just want to, go ahead. Yes, that's it. I just want to end with a final statement here that the standards, again, are robust. And after doing 23 of these in California, I can tell you confidently, and as you would expect, Santa Barbara's are the most robust I've ever worked on. They are the most complete, and it bears out. Santa Barbara's the most beautiful place for a long region, and a lot of people come here because of that. The other thing to tell you is that the standards, although it looks like everything is regulated and it's straitjacketed because it's so prescriptive and so clear, I want to really come back to that statement about I mentioned the architectural style. It looks like everything is regulated, but it's not. We really tried very hard to strike a balance between what is essential, what makes Santa Barbara when it comes to building massing, what makes Santa Barbara when it comes to craftsmen, and so on. And we tried to focus on the essential characteristics at each level, macro and micro. It may not look like it because the document is so robust, but again, the state says if you're going to regulate it, you have to put it on paper. So we just tried to strike that balance, and I just put that out there for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. So I'm just going to wrap things up with a couple more slides. In your packet, there was also a large number of pages that are related to amending Title 30. For ease of use, we included, excuse me, Attachment 5, I believe, talks about all the different amendments we made to Title 30 and put them into different categories. So the categories are really, some of which were directly related to this new Title 25. We needed to have appropriate cross-references and also have, for example, the process of objective design review in Title 30. We also took the opportunity to do some very much clarifying and cleanups to Title 30. These are things we've been collecting over time. And when a certain chapter is being amended, we'll go ahead and do a clarification or cleanup to help everybody. When we got the opportunity to streamline processes and do clarifications for that, we did it. And finally, through our housing element process, there were a couple fairly minor things, but things that were a little out of date or needed to be mentioned in Title 30. So we went ahead and did those too. So that kind of helps us show the state that we are implementing housing element items as well. I'll briefly talk about the objective design review process that's in Title 30 and just touch on the highlights. So per our city charter, these projects still have to go through design review, and they would go to either the Historic Landmarks Commission or Architectural Board of Review. However, needing to do concept review or pre-application is entirely optional for these projects. If an applicant wants to do it, they can, but it's not required. The streamlining comes in with combining project design approval and final design approval, which is usually 2 separate hearings or more, into 1 hearing, and that's because projects, once they get to design review, staff has already checked that they're compliant with the Title 25 standards, and so that 1 hearing is just kind of like a second check by the design review board. They also do need to make findings for approval. The findings are very limited. They're basically need to find that the project is consistent with the Title 25 standards, and there's no significant adverse impact to public health and safety that cannot be mitigated. And finally, final action or by the design review board can be appealed just by the applicant to City Council. I'll touch briefly on a couple other actions. So one of the things we needed to do is, I mentioned Senate Bill 35 earlier, and at the time that passed, we did a much quicker effort to have some objective standards in place in case a project came in to use that process. And so the standards that were created and adopted for that project were pretty much absorbed into the new Title 25. There were some very particular things about, in particular, the Mediterranean style that were put into Title 25. So we don't need that prior document anymore, so we want to replace it. We did the CEQA analysis and found both of these amendments were exempt pursuant to minor alterations in land use limitations. The Title 25 odds do not change the density or intensity of use, and the Title 30 amendments are administrative in nature. We're also required to make sure zoning ordinance amendments are consistent with the general plan. That's included in your attachment to the staff report, that consistency analysis, and we found that we have many policies that support multi-unit infill housing, creation of objective standards, in particular, a lot of policies about pedestrian-friendly design and where parking should go on the site and those sort of things, and also protection of our historic resources. So we found it was consistent. And finally, I'll just end on the recommendation. I won't read it word by word, but the recommendation is to introduce and adopt, by reading a title only, the Title 25 standards. And same thing with the amendments to Title 30 pertaining to objective design and development standards and cleanups. Again, we want to repeal the Resolution 21031 that adopted those previous standards and determine that these amendments to the municipal code are consistent with the general plan. And with that, I'm done with my presentation and be happy to take questions.
Thank you. It's back to council. Ms. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, and I really just want to ask one. And I appreciate our consultant saying that this is the most robust set of standards that you've worked on, and in some ways, I understand that's good, but that also rang some alarm bells for me. And I'm wondering if you can speak to sort of where is that nexus point between having a robust set of standards is critical and important for maintaining community character, versus having too many of these such that it's no longer efficacious for developers to take this path. And are we confident that we've found that balance point? And I guess more to the point, I would love to hear from you and our staff whether we think these are so robust as to maybe turn off developers from utilizing them.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Harmon. Yeah, we believe that this is the right balance. Time will tell, right? You know, you'll apply this to a few projects, and maybe something needs to shake out. That could happen. I'm not going to tell you that it wouldn't. That could happen. But we've really we've worked on so many of these, and also just worked on so many zoning standards across the country with a lot of developers in different situations. You know. I would say we found the balance here. I really believe that, yeah. So time will tell, but I believe that we found it.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just one more follow-up. I believe we spoke about the opportunity to revisit these, and I'm wondering, Ms. Dicey, maybe you can follow up just on what are the opportunities if we find that that balance was not struck, hearing that we think we did, but if it wasn't, what's the opportunity to revisit this in the future?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Harmon. Yes, so we did, when we went to Planning Commission, they also asked, you know, would you be coming back? Will you evaluate how well you did and all that? So we committed to coming back within about 2 years or 10 projects. Not to say we might come back sooner if that isn't coming to fruition, but the other thing we want to do is, before that though, is find out, are people starting to use it? And if they're not, let's do some outreach and find out what is holding people up, what are the stumbling blocks, and why aren't they using it? So I think through that process, maybe we'll be able to set up some sort of online comment form and again, do proactive outreach. We should be able to find out how we're doing and be nimble and make changes.
May I add something, Councilmember? So one way to test this, another way to ask the question, a question we ask ourselves is what could we leave out that architects and developers wouldn't leave out that you would be expecting in a building? And if the answer is, well, we can leave X, Y, and Z out because we know all developers would do that anyway, then that doesn't need to be regulated. The problem is in a beautiful place like Santa Barbara, which it's all nuance and all these intricacies of all these buildings that everybody just looks at and says, that's so beautiful. Yeah, there's some things that you don't need to regulate, but the basic things, that's what I was trying to say in my presentation. The essential elements that make Santa Barbara are what's in that book of standards. And it may look like it's more than maybe anybody's expecting, but it's because it has to be written down and put out in graphics. So,
Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. Thank you to all those staff, everyone participated and put this together. That was, I met with some architects locally who had expressed the very concerns that came with that question, so I appreciate you answering it. So I just have one other question. If you could pull up slide 47. And I don't know if it has any, I don't know if it's part of this conversation or not, but I want to ask the question. And it's specifically the second bullet, the odds do not change density or intensity of use. So here's the question that I have overall with this, and it relates to the Soltara project. So that project is technically an AUD project that was built down there where the Staples is. But in reality, it's an FAR project because they merged the three lots to get a higher density so that he could get more units on there, but still built on the original lot, if that makes sense. And so if at some point the council was going to take up the issue of FAR again, because that project, it's brought in a new discussion that was never there the last time we had it a couple years ago. Would that affect odds in any way? And how would odds be impacted by that? And sorry I didn't ask you that before, it was that bullet that caught me. Or is that something we would have to come back and study, because I just want to make sure that odds isn't really impacting density if that was to come up, or if we would need to change this as part of any discussion of FAR in the future.
Yeah, Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Freeman, it sounds like when I consulted with Mr. Gullett, that would require additional study. It's not something we can really determine right now on the dais.
So, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to answer is in the future, if we went there, we would have to look at odds as well as FAR, and if we were going to have an FAR discussion.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I very specifically don't want to have an FAR discussion. I just want to put that again on the record. But my questions, the articulating the large buildings, I think we talked about this at ordinance, and then I'm looking at attachment 3, and it looks like there are strike-throughs on the table. Let's see, I guess it's, well, it's attachment 3, so I don't know how, it's page 31 in attachment 3. And so the difference between when we saw it, I guess, at ordinance, is the setbacks have just been eliminated, but I heard you very clearly talking about how the setbacks and the facades and the arches is what makes Santa Barbara. So I guess I need some help understanding why the strike through and having no definition of it would somehow help.
Sorry, Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Sneddon. This is a little bit different, so I'll go through why we made that change. When we came to Ordinance Committee, this was something that between when it went to Planning Commission and Ordinance Committee, staff took a careful look at the standards for each zone. And if you're using Title 30 zoning ordinance in your average unit size density incentive program project in certain zones of the city, there are no, let's see, there's no setbacks, interior setbacks or step backs. So step backs are when the building is stepped back from the property line for certain projects in commercial zones. And then when we looked at the mixed-use corridor zone, most of the underlying base zones are commercial zones. So in other words, projects using odds wouldn't get the same incentives as they would under Title 30. So this is already existing in Title 30, the way this has been changed. For projects, average unit size density incentive projects in certain zones of the city get this incentive already. So we wanted projects in the mixed-use corridor to get the same incentive, and that's something that HCD supported as well. Does that make sense?
I think it does, but when it came to ordinance, and I guess we're here now, but when we came to ordinance, I know there were comments about, increasing the articulation.
That was a different standard, sorry to interrupt. But
Okay.
we also talked about, let's see, if there's a building that's over 80 feet in length and it's a block scale building, there's additional articulation standards that come to play. I think you can choose from a tower element, a recess, I believe it is, or a additional step back. And you had asked us to consider reducing that from 80 feet to 60 feet? Is that the one you're remembering?
That's one of them, yeah.
And I spoke to Mr. Perez about that, and maybe I'll let you take over. You had good reasons why that you did not recommend reducing that, because there's already the base standards and other standards for smaller buildings that provide that articulation. Do you want to?
Yes, Councilmember Sneddon. The question that was posed to me by city staff about reducing the trigger for when to require those massing features.
Or increasing the number of articulation elements.
Yeah.
So it could be 60 feet would be one, or at 80 feet you have two, or something like that.
Yes. We recommended keeping it as it is, only because one of the great things about Santa Barbara buildings is they're not over fussy. They're not fussy. Over fussy is redundant, but they're not fussy. They don't have too much on them, as you see in other cities. They're just layered with all these things. And not that that would occur in Santa Barbara, not that that would ever be allowed or approved by you, but if it's possible, then you'd have to deal with it. Somebody coming forward with a 60-foot wide building with too many massing features, you'd have to deal with it when it's our recommendation that maybe that width of a building doesn't need massing features because of the organization of the bays, because of the already massing features that are required of buildings. So we found it could be helpful in a place that has great designers, like in Santa Barbara, and other places that would be disastrous. Here, it could work, but it's not necessary.
Okay, but we're here, so that's what I want to talk about is here.
My recommendation was that because of the other standards that are already in the objective standards, it wouldn't be necessary.
Okay, so I just want to just a little bit, like an articulation element, like a setback, to me isn't fussy. It's not like something ornate or complicated. It's just more space and articulation. It's like actually the loss of fussiness. But I'm hearing you that the question is, was that considered? You considered it?
Yes.
Didn't recommend it. And I think what I was trying to avoid is something like the great expanse space of the back of Paseo Nuevo on Chapala's side that is, and we talk about it all the time, it's just this huge monolith. It's not welcoming. It looks the same all the way through. It doesn't have these articulation elements. And I just really want to emphasize articulation element isn't necessarily fussy.
Yes.
It can be just a little setback or a little change in the shape to allow something that isn't just massing. So I just, to my colleagues, want to emphasize that these articulation elements, you said what some of them were. Setback, what are some other ones? An arch.
Yeah, so you can use the tower element, you can project part of a facade, you can recess part of a facade, you can actually attach a gallery, like you have a lot of examples of that in Santa Barbara that break up the facade.
Okay, so thank you. And I would point back to your own comments that those are the things that make Santa Barbara unique that way. So I would like to, I'll be making hopefully a case for why we would want to keep considering that. I have a question about exceptions list. So how are exceptions going to be determined? What might be some examples of exceptions? And if there's an appeal process to exceptions?
Okay, Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Sneddon. So the exceptions is Chapter 7 of the document. And so the way they're determined is you'd have to, there's a whole list of different exceptions. There's two lists, basically. There's one for sites that are 10% or less average slope, and then a second set of exceptions if you have a greater slope. And they pretty much mimic each other, but you can get, for example, an increase or decrease in the maximum setback for a main building or wing because there's some kind of existing site condition that prevents compliance with the standard. You can get changes to your open yard dimensions, not necessarily the amount of open yard, but just how long or wide it is. There's a whole list of exceptions to allow different access points to your parking or where your parking is located. So it kind of runs the gamut of, as Mr. Perez says, things that commonly come up. I see this chapter as something we could definitely collect. Like if we're seeing other things that are need to be made exceptions, this is a chapter we could definitely work on in the future as well as we're seeing projects come in. I believe you also, could you repeat the other parts of your question you asked?
Just what the appeal process would be, but I think I'm remembering from ordinance committee, and I just want to confirm here.
Yeah.
It's very narrowly defined exceptions. There isn't something like that someone could make an exception that isn't very specifically defined
Correct.
within Chapter 7.
If it's not defined in this chapter and your project needs, let's say, a modification, then you're no longer using this process. You're going to subjective design review.
And if you're no longer using the process, then it is subject to appeal
Correct.
or any of the other. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that's through there. And then how do inclusionary requirements fit in to objective design standards?
Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Sneddon. So the current policies we have are for inclusionary still apply. So, yeah.
Okay, those are, I guess going back to that attachment 3, because I got side on the articulations, 80 feet and to 1 articulation. But so the deletion, I guess I still have the question about how the deletion of the setbacks, it's under table D, it's like primary front facade, 10 min to 15 max, secondary front, 10 min to 15 max, interior 0, and then it's deleted, like strike through.
Actually, Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Sneddon, I realized when I looked at this today, the first 2 lines shouldn't have been shown as deletions. That was an accident. So what we did delete is the 6-foot interior setback and the front and interior step backs requirements. So there's still a primary front and a secondary front setback requirement.
So H, I, and J still will be, well, H will still be 10 min to 15
Yes.
max.
Yeah.
I will still be 10 min to 15 max.
And then the
J will still
interior
be 6
changed
min.
to 0 unless you are adjacent to a residential base zone, in which case you need a 6-foot interior setbacks. This is what similar projects using the ADUD program, this is the incentive they get now. So this just matches that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That actually answers my question, that
Okay,
they
great.
aren't meant to be deleted.
Correct,
Is that-
yeah.
okay.
I realized that when I looked at it earlier today, that
Okay.
we shouldn't have shown strike through on the first 2 lines.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple questions. Mr. Perez, you mentioned multiple times the look and feel of Santa Barbara and what a pleasant place and to visit and look at. And in response to Councilmember Harmon's question, you thought it struck a balance. I have seen nothing in any of the presentation or what you've talked about today that references housing. And in fact, the slide that was shown with all the bubbles that went crossways across the screen for state legislation are all about gains in housing that have historically not been met. So I'm questioning how you think we met I'm questioning if you think that balance in this product leads to gains in multifamily housing that we have historically not been able to accomplish.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Jordan. Sorry, sorry that I did not mention housing, but it just, I thought it'd be so much part of the discussion and the staff report that I didn't say it. So I apologize for that. But yes, this is about implementing part of the Housing Accountability Act, which the state says it's to streamline the production of housing, the approval of housing. So the way that these standards do that is they make the standards to do anything in the city of Santa Barbara clear and objective, that a developer can apply them and go through the process in a specified period of time. And if they comply with the standards, they are approved and they can produce the housing more quickly. So that is the standards part. The financial and everything else, that's all other layers that we can't control. But in terms of the obstacles that the state is trying to remove in terms of people applying discretion to projects, that's not in these standards. It's their objective. And so if an applicant meets the standards, they are approved.
So you would contend that this product allows developers to develop more multifamily housing than the traditional or historical product of a subjective process. And it's not develop, period, more quickly, more streamlined. What I'm talking about is more end result. And so how is that balance? Is that balance in this product not measured by more housing that meets these standards rather than the amount of housing that was produced in the discretionary standards?
Councilmember Jordan, these regulations aren't intended to increase housing development per se. They're not going to change our density. What they do provide is certainty. So when you talk to developers, what are they concerned about? Time, money, and risk. And what this does is address the risk, because if you design your project to meet these objective standards, your project will be approved. So it takes that risk out of the equation. So that's really how it helps.
Okay, thanks. And then for anybody sitting over there at the table, if builder's remedy is the devil, then certainly bonus density use in today's world is his stepchild. And how does this product not just continue to push people back to the discretionary historical pathway and a builder's density project? Or is, again, that answer still the same, Allison, that that's not the intent of this 3 years of work?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Jordan, so if somebody wants to do this process but also do state bonus density, that's perfectly available to them, just like it is under Title 30. So there may be certain standards they want to waive in order to get their number of units that they want, and that's just the process that's available.
But the concessions they could ask for could be in conflict or contradictory to this ordinance, right?
Well, the concessions they ask for could be I suppose they could waive things that are sort of key to Title 25, but if they say, for some reason, I don't want to provide a frontage or something, we would just have to grant that concession.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. So I'm looking at the architectural styles map, and it appears to me that it kind of covers what's there already. So my question is, because I understand Mediterranean, I understand craftsman, but contemporary to me seems like a very broad definition. And so I'm wondering if that's meant to be neighborhood compatibility, like if you go where it's already existing and you're building to that. Because, obviously you can go and do the reviews, you can do the review process if you want to build something different that we've made them in the odds. I didn't know if we were required to do this in order to have it more utilized, or if it's a choice we're making, or if we're trying to be compatible with what's already there.
Mayor Rouse, so the choice of the architectural styles, I think, originated by being, again, Tony mentioned they did an existing conditions study and looked at all the different styles in the city. And I think originally we actually had other styles we were considering that were prevalent in the city. But it boiled down to the 3 style groups that ultimately were selected as being the most prevalent and also frequently used for new projects as well. So essentially, we wanted to provide a choice for developers. So you're in a certain area of the city, and if you are allowed all 3 styles, then you have more choices. But really, the craftsman and the Mediterranean style group were the most prevalent, and that's what we would want to see moving forward for projects using this process. And again, if they have something that does not fit into those style groups, they can go through design review and do the regular subjective design review
No, I get
process.
that,
Yeah.
the locations are fine, because once again, it's pretty much where they exist anyway, so it's a matter of
Yeah.
compatibility. I was just kind of curious, because contemporary doesn't mean much to me in terms of what a style is, and I thought,
see.
if we're going to have something that's going to be a clear path, then we want to encourage the continuation of our aesthetic in the city,
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Yeah, and one of the things we did when we were looking at this architectural styles map, if this helps, is looked at all our existing design guidelines and design districts and thought, is there any guidance in these that say a certain style is appropriate in certain areas of the city? So for example, contemporary originally we had suggested should be in the Upper State Street area because it's mentioned in the Upper State Street design guidelines. But through public input and input from the various hearing bodies, we've shrunk that down quite a bit.
No, and I'm pleased with the product I see in
Yeah.
front of me. I was just kind of curious on how we got there, because I remember those in the previous guidelines, so.
Yeah, the contemporary has just been problematic for some people, and it's a little hard to define, and there was some concern that would be the default style, because it tends to be potentially a little less expensive to build to that style.
Well, I just think of what happened at the 7-Eleven North Milpas, where we went from a contemporary style to,
Right.
and they came back to a Mediterranean style, which
Yeah.
is obviously a nice, result in terms of what it's going to be, so.
Yeah, and the Mediterranean style can be very stripped down as well. It doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
It could be equivalent to contemporary as far as cost goes.
Right, okay, very good. All right, with that, I will go to public comment. And we have Rick Clausen, and we'll go to 3 minutes. I know that there's a few folks out there that are not going to last 2 minutes. That's not going to work. So we'll go 3.
Well, first of all, I have to tell you how much happier I am to be speaking to you today than the last time that we spoke. More than 100 years ago, a citizen group wanted to promote a particular style, a particular building style here in Santa Barbara. And that promotion was accelerated by the cataclysm of our 1925 earthquake. But it resulted in a lot of what we have now, Spanish colonial revival and other styles of that era, which have served us very well. And I think all of the speakers on other topics earlier today have either said or inferred Santa Barbara is a nice place to visit. It looks good, it feels good. And a lot of that has to do with its architecture. So I'm happy to say that I like everything about what has been presented. And I hope that you will approve it and push it on its way. I want to say something specifically about, first of all, to the contemporary style, that basically is free-for-all. And I don't think that we want that, and it was a good decision to move that out of the upper state area. But I want to comment on the process. You know, some of you know, I'm part of a lunch group that likes to get involved. And we have been very involved with this from the early get-go with a lot of comments. And I'm happy and proud to say that a lot of them got incorporated. Probably they came from other people too. They're not unique to what we said. But I feel this has been a very transparent process that we appreciate very much as citizens. And I like that, we like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. I've got 4 points. One is to thank Ms. Deisty, Mr. Gullett, Ms. Perez, Mr. Perez from Optico for the wonderful job, and I echo the previous speaker's comments about the process. It was excellent, and yes, our little group that watches this kind of thing feel very gratified that most everything we look for is in this process. One of the things that I want to talk about that was brought up by Ms. Harmon and Mr. Jordan about the challenge of this document, it's quite thick when you look at it, is that we have probably a handful, maybe greater than a handful of architects here in this town that know how to do this design, and they're not going to look at that process as challenging. They know how to do it. Unbeknownst to some of you, I have done very big contemporary architecture elsewhere in this state, flying wings and all that kind of stuff, but I've also done traditional architecture. And I was told a long time ago by an instructor at Cal Poly that the harder thing to do is when you have a very restrictive style type than just doing contemporary, because you can do everything, whatever you want. And it takes much more discipline. So talented designers can do that. And that's the issue of these design standards. And remember now, this is not going to be a panacea, because I can see several cases where a designer will take the cut and paste and do it totally incorrectly. Bad proportions, out of scale, et cetera. So you have to pay attention to that. Good designers and good architects know how to do this work. And I'm happy after 15, 20 years of trying to promote form-based planning, we're here. We've got it. And then the only other thing to be cautioned about is because of the state laws and the appeal process, the way it's defined, only the applicant can appeal the ODDS issue if it's challenged. The public will have to go to court. So that requires us as citizens to spend money to take it to court if we disagree with an administrative decision. Thank you so much. Please move this ahead. Let's get going. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Jordan.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, my name is Dennis Dorton. I'm a commissioner on the Historic Landmarks Commission and a member of the working group that advised city staff on the document under review here. And I'm here to urge you to accept it. The challenge in drafting this document was to apply a general statewide mandate to the specific local scene here in Santa Barbara. A danger with statewide design and development mandates is that they produce bland, one-size-fits-all restraints. But we don't want Santa Barbara to end up looking like Concord or Salinas. And let me say, I'm not knocking those cities. I used to live in Concord. It's a nice town. It's just not a special town. This document is tailored to our specific situation. Ms. Deisty has run an exemplary process, and multiple constituencies have had the opportunity to comment. Are these too robust? No, they are objective. The state wants to remove discretion from the process. Well, this is what it looks like when you can't have a conversation, when it's just an up and down discussion. Nothing in this document inhibits architectural creativity. Developers get what they want, a fast track to approval. The city gets what it needs, confidence that the results will be appropriate. This is not a recipe book for builders' remedies disasters. Mr. Sweeney is correct. There's a very sophisticated design community here that knows how to work with this material. This will not inhibit good architectural or urban design in Santa Barbara. This is a comprehensive, usable document that responds to a state mandate. This is the solution the state, the city, and local developers and architects need. I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Cass Ensberg.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council, staff, consultants, and the whole community. Appreciate the time today. Listening here, I have a number of things to say. I'm Cass Ensberg, and I served on the ODDS work group, but I'm here speaking for myself today. Just sitting here today, I was here at 3, and I heard the discussions about the Visit Santa Barbara and from the wine people, and I was a little bit surprised and curious that in all of those discussions, there was no mention of the importance of our built environment, of the architecture, of the buildings themselves, the backdrop that we are known for, and that creates the environment for all of these things to occur. For our recreational activities and to be enjoyed by visitors and locals alike. So I was really surprised by that. I'm going to kind of jump around, but the ODDS is an alternative path, as you know, I mean, they've been talking about this, to our traditional design review, which is a discussion and a critique with a panel of local design professionals. I believe we should appreciate and thank our design review boards for the work they do, the collaborative work that they do in helping projects to be the best that they can be, to contribute to Santa Barbara's reputation as a beautiful coastal town full of recreation and culture. I don't believe that the ODDS can match the traditional review process in ensuring sensitive placement, scale, and our Santa Barbara whimsical style. We always call it poetry, you know, the thing that brings delight. I believe that our staff and our consultants have done an excellent job, and I support it. I would also say that regardless of the work that any of us does, whether we're a teacher, a scientist, you know, a winemaker, a restaurateur, a lawyer, a real estate broker, whatever, critique is critical and an invaluable, necessary process. I remain convinced that the contemporary style should be removed from the ODDS. I feel that it is too general and lacking the artistic details we in Santa Barbara call the poetry. And I believe that these projects would be better if they went through the normal process. So I don't want to, if you agreed with that, perhaps you can approve and then condition by removal of the contemporary style. Although I think that, you know, simplifying the map has helped greatly. But with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Leslie Wiscombe.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Leslie Wiscombe, and I'm here representing the Planning Commission. We had 3 meetings on the objective design and development standards. In 2023, we basically made recommendations to improve the objectivity of the standards. So a lot of it was wording and changes there. And then fast forward to August of 2024. At our August 8th meeting, we had a particularly lively discussion regarding the allowance of the contemporary style in certain zones. And it's an allowance that's now substantially reduced by not using it on Upper State Street. I think, just as a comment on the side, from my perspective, it's still allowed over by City College, where it's very eclectic, and perhaps it would be appropriate. We also asked staff to make some amendments, including requiring a status report after X amount of time or X number of projects, whichever comes first. And I think that helps address what Councilmember Harmon was talking about. We wanted to ensure the necessary amendments could be made after a reasonable amount of time. Number 2, tightening up some of the definitions, like top of the bank creek for creeks. And number 3, adding some flexibility to the size of a plaza in community open space without compromising the intent. At our August 29th meeting, we forwarded our final recommendations that incorporated the August 8th amendment to the Ordinance Committee and City and Council, including compliance with our general plan. The process to create these standards was thorough and fair, involving many meetings with the public and stakeholders, including design professionals, affordable housing providers, and developers. And on behalf of the Planning Commission, I want to thank Dan Gullett, Rosie Dicey, and all the community development staff, and Tava Offstringer, and all of the city attorney staff who worked tirelessly on this ordinance. As well, kudos to our design consultant, Tony Perez, for outstanding guidance in retaining our city's aesthetics and neighborhood context while responding to requirements for objective standards. So we encourage you to approve the ordinance, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, are there any speakers online?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. And with that, we'll come back to council. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just cut to the chase, I'll support moving this on. I think it's important to show a really good majority or unanimous vote to move this on to go sell it to HCD. I don't want to be a fly in that process. But I think it's a missed opportunity. And so clearly, if you would have asked me 3 years ago what I wanted to see going through this process, we would have seen a balance equation that clearly worked towards generating more multifamily housing units on the ground than historically we have through the subjective process. Clearly, that is not what I've been told before this, that clearly that was not the intent of this. So I think we've missed an opportunity in that pursuit. I firmly believe that you can accomplish both the protection of the look and feel of Santa Barbara and doing much better than our historical subjective process of working projects generating X amount of new housing units. You don't have to watch the process very long to see whole floors lopped off of projects where they're under the zoning allowance, to see footprints and volume being lost on projects that aren't asking for variances or modifications. So I would have been hopeful that we took the opportunity through all this work to look for ways to both check the box for compliance with the state and actually develop a process that penciled out, that expedienced out, and got more housing units on the ground that look and feel like we want them to and that we like than we have historically, looking back in 2 general plans. Mr. Clausen, to your comments, when I look back on the major milestones, what's missing on there is some individual meetings with council members in the last several months. In those major milestones, you don't see a single mention of council members. So the collective process that you are saying was wonderful is totally lost on someone like me. I have no idea what was discussed, what was bandied about, what was thrown out, what was added in, what the concerns were, what the remedies were. So that process was a closed group process from that standpoint, because now it's put in front of electeds who have no clue what conversations or what dynamics took place amongst all those groups internally with staff. And it, for me, at least personally, it doesn't sell itself well to be in this position. So, and I've said this before about kind of our culture, our dynamic. We embark upon these relatively significant processes and bring something that we're sticking a toothpick in the brownie to see if the toothpick comes out without moist batter on it and it's cooked. And that's when we bring it to council. We don't bring it to council when we're mixing up the ingredients and pouring it into the bowl. We don't do touches along the way to find out, are you in agreement or are you not in agreement? Can we work around your agreement? Can we just agree to disagree? And it inherently puts you already at a disadvantage because of the time and resources that have been put into this project. To say, no, I don't agree with that. So I agree with a couple things you said that were said here today. I just don't think contemporary has a place in this at all, either, any place in town. I think you just ought to make that go through the regular process. And then I think a 2-year report out is too long. If you go a year from now and you don't have a real good touch base on this to talk about and say that it's working well, then this mini phone book is too complicated and there's not enough good architects out there. If it's simply just a checkbox for the state to let you off of their compliance list, then that's a shame. But you should be able, I think, to report out in a year and either talk about the success stories or talk about what outreach you're doing, which you mentioned doing before, if that was the case, to talk about the outreach at that time and what you're hearing are the impediments to implementing it. So, so again, I'll help move this forward. Those are my 2 suggestions for slight changes on this, and looking forward to hearing the rest of you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I had some similar thoughts to Mr. Jordan, albeit maybe from a slightly different perspective, and I'll start first by saying thank you. I too felt that I was outside of this process, and in fact had no visibility whatsoever into it really at all. However, I think maybe the difference here is I was so heartened to hear both in our conversation about how this has evolved before today's hearing, but also particularly from our invested community members who took the time to come out to communicate how effective the process was for them. And I just fundamentally believe I'm not a housing developer. I am not an architect. It is, obviously, I'm a decision maker up here, but the folks that are on the ground doing this work are the ones who were engaged day to day in the development of the standards. And I think that is the most important piece. So to me, that was absolutely critical and extremely heartening to hear that every person who spoke about this process felt that they were engaged throughout, that it had been run effectively, and that they had opportunity to have their both criticisms and support heard in this process. And so to me, that was a success. I agree it would be great to have additional touch points through the process. I think that's probably a note on every ordinance development moving forward is something that would be positive and helpful, but it seems to me that this could not, other than that, have been run more effectively. And the people who are going to be utilizing this ordinance are the ones who really were engaged and had a hand in crafting it, and I think that's the most important part. I do share Councilmember Jordan's concerns about a missed opportunity to facilitate multi-unit housing development. I also understand that was not the purpose of this exercise. So, you know, there's not much to say other than that. I do look forward to when this returns, whether it's 6 months from now or 2 years from now or whenever it is, for us to see if there's some way to truly streamline or facilitate whatever the word is there. That's something that I would like for us to pursue, whether it's through the ODDS, through some other mechanism, and maybe it is another mechanism, but it is, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a missed opportunity, but there is an opportunity there. And I, for one, would like to see us as a city pursue that. It's needed. Multi-unit housing development is needed, and if we can find some way, whether it's through a process that's analogous to this or adjacent to it, I guess I'm just saying that as a sort of general point. I would love for us to pursue that, whether it's through ODDS or some other way. And then the last point I'll respond to is the contemporary style. I actually agree with Ms. Wiscombe's point, particularly about sort of the eclectic nature up by City College and how it could be appropriate up there. And so I'm comfortable. I think the removing the contemporary style from Upper State was a great decision. I'm personally happy with how it is now. I think a good balance has been struck. That said, if our colleagues are interested in removing it altogether, it's certainly not a hill that I am interested in dying on, and happy to support whichever way folks want to go. In general, this was clearly a huge, huge amount of effort. So my gratitude. I look forward to seeing how it works and for us to come back together and continue to improve on it, and I will be supporting this today. Thank you.
Mayor, I just wanted to, if you don't mind, just respond, because the process question has come up twice, and I just wanted to acknowledge the concerns. I've heard that sort of privately from council members when I meet with you as well, and Director Isaacson and I have been having some conversations, and I will say that trying to frame policy discussions with the council earlier, I think that's why we held the joint council planning commission meeting around hotel uses and the AUD process, the policy framing for the short-term vacation rental ordinance. So look, more of that to come, and I just want to acknowledge those comments and really getting some framing policy direction from the council before we start on these major work efforts is definitely something we've heard feedback on. So just want to acknowledge those comments.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. McAdoo. Appreciate that. It does lead to better outcomes at the end of the day. First, just want to say thank you to our wonderful staff, Ms. Deisty, Mr. Gullett, Ms. Ostringer, and all the staff. Also the work group and all those who spoke today. You put a lot of effort into this, and it's important work. And I am going to support it. Just in general, one of the questions I have, and I guess it remains to be seen, is one of the primary factors in development of new housing is the cost. There's the land costs, but then there's the city process itself. That's where we get most of the complaints, is through the process where it could be inconsiderate, whatever it is. And so the question I have is this, when you put in more regulations, especially ones that are fine detailed like this, and it's something to monitor for when you come back to us, whether it's a year from now or 2 years or whenever it is this process making that exacerbating that situation, or is it making it better because there's clear standards that people are going through, and you're not having multiple hearings, you're not getting different feedback at a different hearing? I don't know, because it's a lot of regulation in there, and so that's something I'd be interested in when it comes back. I do appreciate Ms. Ensberg raising the issue from the earlier discussions tonight about the architecture of a town. It is very important, the built environment in which we live. And there's a concept I've seen, it's called gentle density, and it it gets people to meander within a city rather than having these bulky different buildings, but it tells a story. So if you're walking through downtown or different areas, the architecture helps tell the story of the city and the community. So I appreciate you raising that, because it's just as important. People come here from around the world to see the courthouse. It's a gem, internationally known, from architecture that came out of 100 years ago, what had happened, and so many of our other buildings at the time. So that's the other frustration I have with the state is, in order to build housing, they're taking away a lot of the discretion that led to why this community and others like it, but especially Santa Barbara, are so special. And when you take that away, you lose a lot of your ability and your controls out there. So hopefully this would be something that will help us to maintain that and meet the state standards. Again, time will tell. And then the other thing, I'll just mention it, and I appreciate Councilmember Sutton's comment that she does not support FAR, and I'm not saying I support FAR. But in light of the discussion that my other two colleagues had in terms of housing and what took place over on at the Soltara, there might be new information that we didn't have 2 years ago where we could have better controls and we can understand it better than a few years ago that could help us as part of that other discussion that my two colleagues have said. Because, like I said earlier, that project is essentially an FAR project, even though technically it's an AUD, the way it was designed. But that's a different discussion in terms of how we're going to meet our numbers. And so don't want to commit to that, but I think it needs to be discussed as part of the overall package of how we're going to meet those numbers. And in the end, Mr. Dorton, I think he summed it up best, is like this is what happens when you remove discretion. It's just an up or down. So for today, I'm an up. And hopefully I will get an up, another thumbs up at the end of the movie at Film Festival tonight, because I'm really looking forward to that after this discussion.
Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So, I mean, I have to say, I think you've done the impossible in objective design standards. When I think about all of the people who came forward right at the first, like, how is it ever going to be possible to do objective design standards here in Santa Barbara? And including our, formidable former mayor, Sheila Lodge, and the author of The Uncommon Place, American Town. That was one of her, this is impossible. And then hearing from members of the Planning Commission, this is going to be impossible. HLC, this is going to be impossible. So it's actually, I think the biggest stamp of approval I can think of is that some of those very same people who were talking about the impossibility of it are in this room today saying to move this forward. And I wouldn't have thought that was possible, that we could get there. So well done to staff, Rosie Deisty, Tava Ostringer, Dan Gullett, Opticos, thank you for working with us, and all of the legal teams. And I think, before I say just a couple things about what I think we might consider changing in there, I think it's really important, as Cass Ensberg mentioned, that we acknowledge the volunteer work of our design review boards. And that process could go more smoothly. Poetry might be able to be more defined in a way in different times, but this is getting like one step closer to that, so that there is another way if that's what a developer wants to do. They always have this as a option. And I think, again, emphasizing our volunteers on our design review boards do make projects better. And I'm hoping that we'll still, have that robust process for citywide to be looking through. And I want to thank you particularly for your service. And all of you who participated in this process must have spent an inordinate amount of time either at your lunch meetings at Joe's or meeting with staff or in all of the different ways. And I also want to say that maybe it's a function of which boards and commissions that we're liaisons to. I felt very involved in this process, not involved in that I weighed in, but I felt informed. There were a lot of public in De La Guerra Plaza where people were putting stickies about which zones do you think should be this type of style or that type of style. I think at HLC it was heard several times. At Planning Commission it was heard. At ABR it was heard. So there might be an opportunity here for the chairs of those committees, when things come up that are clearly going to be important to council, I think maybe we could be having more communication back and forth, or being signaled that, hey, I know you're the liaison for this, and these upcoming meetings are a really big deal. You might want to pay attention to them. I've benefited from that. I mean, members of HLC in particular, Cass Ensberg, lets me know when something is, you got to pay attention to this. This is coming to HLC, and I've really appreciated that kind of communication. So it shouldn't be that we're getting different input and briefings. We also saw it at Ordinance Committee, which we did a very, very deep dive at Ordinance Committee. So I think it's fair to acknowledge that it might feel like not everybody has the same starting point on this. But really, staff, I think, did so much public outreach. I mean, they had the draft up in public and input, and so maybe more signaling to council, like, this is when you should go look at this public draft, and this is where to find it. Just the signal that it's, the rest of the public is looking at it, you should too. So I think that I want to, we're skipping over that attachment 3, that was an error, the strike through in the first 3 lines, so we definitely need to address that. I really do believe we need to be doing more in articulating the buildings. I think this would address what Councilmember Friedman is referring to in multiple different ways as lot combining, and it's not exactly an FAR, and it's not exactly this and not exactly that, but your end result is a very large, massive building. And if it's really that large and massive, I just think it needs more articulation if it's going to be, by right approval. I don't know. I think just one more feature per category. So that same table, but just adding one more feature per category. It could even be a minor feature. I really think that would be worthwhile to address what it is that Councilmember Friedman is referring to. And I'm a little bit worried we wouldn't be able to add more articulation elements later. That might be seen as making it more onerous later. But if we start off with more articulations, or even like 1.5 articulations, so that if going slightly over that, you're just rounding up. I just think that I feel pretty strongly about that. I would be okay with eliminating contemporary altogether. I appreciate how much we have squished it down into where we could have it. I'm also okay with it being where it is. So either way on that, but if that was part of a motion to remove it altogether, I would be supportive of that too. I think form-based planning is a really good idea here, and this is a really good attempt at it. I agree the form needs to address the larger city as well. I mean, we've talked about things in the past about block by block, and I think now that we're really looking at this in terms of State Street, and we're all sort of reading the same books about Happy City and being like, wow, these are things that could happen. I do still think there's room for that. That would be my not missed opportunity, but future opportunity, is to be looking at that block by block. And it does address the Solterra issue. If you're combining lots of buildings and you're having one massive building, how does that change what the form might be for an entire block? I think we haven't quite addressed that all the way. I want to reiterate my appreciation for our volunteer design review boards. And I agree that we need a status report after a certain amount of time. I would think it would take 2 years before we would even know what was coming through the pipeline, but I'd be fine with sooner than that, but I just think realistically 2 years would be a good time. And then just to reiterate, ABR, HLC, Planning Commission, I think in particular with the liaisons, we could be reaching out more as well, but it's just so very helpful when a member of those committees who sees things happening relays that back to us as a body.
All
All right, so it was gratifying to hear the reaction from some of the public about the work of staff and how they felt included in the product that came out of it. And I, for one, do not feel excluded. I asked for and got personal staff briefings, plus following all the different the boards and reviews of all this thing. So what I'd like to see is kind of what we saw. I'd like to see a rather arcane and complex subject come down to us in a relatively finished form. And updates, fine, and all that kind of thing. We don't create these policies. We need our experts and our more expert bodies to do this for us so that we can ratify that and understand it to the end. I think that's more important than getting into the weeds a lot of this stuff. And as far as the timeline goes, the check back, I'm going to caution that, given what just happened down in LA, the idea that there are going to be contractors and materials available at any reasonable price or any availability soon is probably a little far-fetched. Because price of construction loans just jumped up to double figures recently. So that's going to mean a lot more than what we do up here. What we do up here was important. It's important to have people understand. But even with the arcane nature that some of us complained about of this product, as Mr. Sweeney pointed out, that professionals are going to know how to deal with it and what to do with this. And I think that's really important. It's important for all members of the professional class, the AIA people, to understand these processes, work with our staff, front load these projects before we get into them and spend a ton of money and time and hear the complaints we always are going to hear. So I, for one, am grateful to staff and for the citizen bodies that participated. I think it was a great effort. Ms. Ostringer.
Yes, Mayor Rouse and council members. I just wanted to point out that it's completely fine if this council wants to remove the contemporary style group. We're happy to do whatever the council directs, but I just want to make you aware we may need to take it back to Planning Commission because of the ordinance. I'll look into it. I'm hoping we don't, but generally if Planning Commission has not seen something that's substantive, we go back, they consider it, make a recommendation, and then we would bring it forward to you again.
Thank you for that clarification.
Minor changes like, I suppose if we went from 80 feet to 60 feet for articulation, that necessarily wouldn't have to go back. There's already articulation in it. And similarly, if we're going to correct, if council decides they want to introduce this today, I would recommend in the motion that we correct the attachment 3 that Councilmember Sneddon had identified.
Thank you, appreciate that. And with that, would anybody like to craft a motion? It sounds like Ms. Sneddon might.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, first I'd like to ask a question about the articulation, and I don't know if I have the support of my colleagues or not, but would it be preferable to have 60 feet, or would it be preferable to stay at 80 feet, but have, 1.5 articulations that then gets rounded up? Which way would make more sense?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Harmon. It would, I guess, just to make sure to understand what you're asking us to do is you would like to see more features required sooner. Yeah, okay. So I would recommend to the staff and to you that it just be a straightaway 1, 2, 3, or 4, and increase the number of, and lower the threshold for when that starts to be required. So 60 feet, I was trying to remember, I remember when I was first asked the question, I was looking at the lot sizes, and that has something to do with that trigger. So most lots are 50 feet wide, sometimes they're 60 or 75 feet wide, and we thought 80 feet wide was a good time to start requiring that. That's where that came from. So
it would be beyond what a typical lot size is? So
no,
you wouldn't even be
it would just start
requiring
applying. It would start applying to smaller lots. So, and that's okay if that's what the community wants. I'm just giving you the logic of how we got there. So, actually, 60 feet wouldn't catch buildings that are 50 feet wide. So it's just a question of for you all, how did you arrive at 60? I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Instead of simply just changing it, we can do that. Yeah. But just to make sure that if you wanted to catch things at 50 feet, you'd need to change it to say.
Thank you. Well, and I suppose at ordinance, I think what I had asked was look into that and come back. I guess I didn't expect that it would come back with like, no, So I kind of thought, like, I'm throwing out 60 feet, but maybe somebody who's an expert in this might come back with what a meaningful number might be. So now I'm just, again, throwing out 60 feet because that's a number that was mentioned to me by someone who was an architect. So, but I'm obviously not the expert in it, and I don't want to be arbitrary. So that's why I was hoping, when the question went out at ordinance, I think I was hoping to hear a number.
Right, and, Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Sneddon, for the 60 feet, if we went from 80 to 60, that's something that I could quickly fix if it was introduced before. But if we're adding like an extra articulation or feature, that's a little harder to draft. I probably would suggest if that's where if we want to add that piece, that we come back and introduce it at a different, at the next hearing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't want to slow it down. But I think the 60 feet would help really as it gets higher, because then it goes 60 to 120 instead of 80 to 160. So it's really not at the 60, the initial 60 or 80. It's as it gets larger. And what I'm really concerned about is lot combining. And that's the potential for mega massive buildings is there, and we're seeing people doing it, and there's a handful of people who own whole city blocks, and I would like to do that. So I guess I'll make an attempt then at making a motion that would be, and what I'm understanding is if I propose 60 feet, that is not something that would have to go back to any other commission. It could still be part of the introduce and subsequently adopt.
Correct.
Okay. So then I would make the motion to, first, recommendation 1, to introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only. Oh, well, let me back up for a second. Why do we have to have 2 different recommendations?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, I would suggest you would make all of staff's recommendations and then make a couple of minor revisions. And those minor revisions have to be such that we can make them now. They're really typographical kind of revisions, that we can make them and understand them now. Otherwise, we would need to bring it back for reintroduction later.
Perfect. Thank you.
Also, if council, a majority of council wants to establish a firm date to bring it back, I would suggest adding that to your motion as well, or leave that up to staff when they feel there's enough progress made where there can be a substantive return for further discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Then I would move staff's recommendation with the minor changes of the attachment 3 not having a strike through of the first 3 lines, and changing the articulation table to start at 60 feet rather than 80 feet.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first by Councilwoman Sneddon, second by Mr. Freeman. Does everybody understand the motion? Maybe we should have that read back, if you would, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, I have the motion as a motion by Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, to move the staff recommendations with the minor changes of attachment 3 not having a strike through on the first 3 lines, and changing the articulation table to start at 60 feet rather than 80 feet.
All right, everybody understand that? All right, let's go for the vote.
Okay, go ahead and vote, please.
What? We have a what?
Do we need to put a timeline on when we want to report back? No.
No. There's one in every crowd. That's unanimous. We thank you very much. Are there any council member engagements? Anybody wants to talk about? Okay, go ahead. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quickly, attended the Lunar New Year celebration at the Trust for Historic Preservation, an outstanding event. And then the Santa Barbara Athletic Roundtable Women in Sports Luncheon and the Visit Santa Barbara Tourism Summit.
All right. Any further ones? If not, we will stand. What? Didn't see it on there. Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the League of Cities newly elected council member conference in Anaheim with my colleague Wendy Santa Maria, and I also attended the Chinese Lunar New Year celebration at the Historic Trust as well. And I also attended a protest on Milpa Street, and I just want to let the community know that if you plan on doing protest, that's all good, it's your First Amendment right, but try to do it in a safer location, because luckily nothing bad happened, but let's make sure that we're safe about it, and let us know, because we're here to essentially protect you. So yeah, just communicate with us and we'd be happy to assist you. Thank you.
Ms. Santa Maria?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So as Councilmember Gutierrez mentioned, we both went to the League of California Cities Conference this past week. I also attended the Women in Sports Luncheon at Earl Warren Showgrounds yesterday. And I actually want to second some of what Councilmember Gutierrez said. And, we are in a time when folks are going to want to come out and protest and use their First Amendment right. I would encourage everyone to also get in touch with your representatives so that we know what's going on and we can provide the support that you need, and just make sure that everything is done in a safe way.
All right, if there are no further reports out, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.